What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Now, today I've got for you 3 hours of some of the very best entitled people stories of the last couple of months. So sit back, relax, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Let's get into them. Someone tried to get me fired for existing. Back in the early 2000s, I was the IT manager for a small company. In May of one year, I hired Robin, the first female in our department. She was a church friend of one of my team, and he recommended her. I made sure that she met the other team member and gave them time without me present. I not only got his feedback, but I made sure that she had a good vibe from him before I hired her. Everyone got along, and things were running smoothly for several months. The Friday before Thanksgiving, we had a company get-together, and everyone's spouses came. That's when Robin met my husband. I left on Saturday for a 2-week vacation, and when I got back, my boss called me before I could even boot up my computer and asked me to come to his office. While I was gone, Robin accused me of sexual harassment. HR did their investigation and said they could find no evidence of it, because it never happened, but offered to transfer her to another department, and she declined. Then she said I was an incompetent manager. My style was to assign projects based on people's skills or interests, or let them decide among themselves who was going to do what if it wasn't specific. The other 2 people in the department loved the freedom and trust. Robin apparently did not. That is exactly the sort of boss that I would want. Someone that just trusts me to get on with what I need to do and just says, okay, I believe in you, go and do your thing, come back when it's done. My boss said that she couldn't point out any specific requests she made that I was unresponsive to, nor could she think of any time I singled her out or treated her differently. The fact that I wasn't micromanaging her made me a bad manager in her eyes. My boss told her that might be new for her, but that was how he managed too, and he'd never heard anyone complain about being trusted too much or given too much freedom. He suggested she tell me that she needed more oversight. She said she wasn't comfortable having that conversation, so he offered to do it for her. That's when she said that she couldn't work with me because I am gay. Oh my goodness. Okay, the truth comes out. My boss asked her if I said or did anything inappropriate, and she said no. In fact, prior to meeting my husband, she thought I was talking about a roommate when I referred to him. Ah, now I see, okay. Homosexuality was against her religious beliefs, and she never would have taken the job had she known. My presence created a hostile work environment for her, so he had to fire me, according to her, of course, this is. She was also outraged that my boss dared to call himself a Christian and would accept someone so blatantly sinful. My boss told her to get over it or quit because he was not firing me over her religious beliefs. And she actually quit. When I got back to my desk, the guy who recommended her said she started stirring stuff up at church, trying to get him thrown out of the congregation since he knew I was gay. He said the church had several lesbian and gay members and never said anything negative about homosexuality, so he was surprised at her stance. The preacher actually asked her not to come back. I was blown away by Robin's sense of entitlement. She thought her being an evangelical Christian meant she got to dictate who a company could hire or who could attend a church. I was thankful that everyone, my boss, HR, my team, even an unknown preacher, had my back. Oh, there we go. I was wondering, I was really wondering at the start why the Thanksgiving party was relevant to the story. It sounded as if, to me, it was just kind of thrown in there and it wasn't really relevant, and then we just went back to the story. But, of course, that is where Robin met your husband, OP, and, the homophobia really came out. I mean, it's one thing being homophobic. Personally, I don't really advocate for that, I'm going to be honest. It's not something that I personally stand for, obviously. But it's another thing then saying, oh, because somebody's gay, I now cannot work with them. They need to be kicked out of church. Oh, and then they sexually harass me. Because obviously if you are gay, then you do, just by law, unfortunately, just sexually harass people. It's just a fact of being gay. And, you guys watching out there that are gay will know that. It's what you sign up for. When you say, I'll write my signature here, I'm gay now. You are going to get an assault charge and you're probably going to go to prison for that. It's tough, but if you want to be gay, that's the thing you got to do. Well, at least that's what it sounds like this woman thinks, because she is stupid. I think we can all agree on that. Robin, more like she's robbing brain cells from me after I read this. Let's get on to the final story. Now for our next story. Entitled couple plan a photo shoot at my gazebo. Entitled couple plan a photo shoot at my gazebo. I am a 50-year-old woman and I rent a place along a river in Ontario, Canada every year in August for 10 to 14 days. My rental includes exclusive use of a cabin, a private deck with a hot tub, and a furnished gazebo. Mine is the only rental with a gazebo. Just east of my place is another, smaller cabin with just a dock and a hot tub. I get back from a quick grocery shopping expedition. As I'm unpacking my car, a young woman walks over and climbs on my deck. She's obviously either just showered or just gone out of the hot tub. She's in a bathrobe. "Hi," she says. "I just wanted to stop by and tell you that me and my partner will be doing a photo shoot in the gazebo tomorrow morning. Just letting you know as a courtesy, since we will be moving your boats out for the photo shoot. Don't worry though, we will put them back." Now, the gazebo is attached to the deck which surrounds my rental cabin. My kayaks are in the gazebo when rain is forecast. It's been raining off and on all day. Now, I have exclusive use of the entire area. Nobody from the other rentals is supposed to come near my area. This info is part of the owner's orientation for all new arrivals. I'm standing at my cabin door with grocery bags in my hands, dumbfounded that she thinks she can take over the gazebo that is part of my rental. "So, are you staying here alone or do you have your husband and kids with you? Do you own the cabin? How much did it cost? How long have you been here?" These were bullet quick questions that she asked. No pauses for answers. So I just say, "You are in my private space. Please leave." "Oh, I'm just being friendly." "No, you are intruding on my space and invading my privacy. Your questions are intrusive and creepy. You will not be doing a photo shoot tomorrow or any time in my gazebo. Please leave now." "No need to get snippy," she says in a snippy tone. "We're doing the shoot tomorrow, so you better not interfere. Given your attitude, I think it's best that you head into town by 8. Don't come back before 2. Oh my god. So now she's not only demanding and telling you that she is going to be using your gazebo and chucking all your stuff out of there, but she's actually now saying you should go and be in this exact location from this time to this time. Just full control of your life at this point. I kind of love it, to be honest, the audacity to say, "No, actually, you know what, go over there for 6 hours. That's unbelievable." "No, that's not happening," I replied. "Get off my deck and get out of my space now." She then stamps her foot. "You are being unreasonable. You're the only one with a gazebo. You need to share." "No, I don't. Leave now." I went into the cabin, locked the door, and immediately messaged the owner. I've been renting here for years. The owner and I had become friends. They didn't show up for their photo shoot, and the owner had to chase them out of the rental the next morning. They were still in bed an hour past checkout time. Okay, good on the owner to back you up there. And I think that's actually the thing that's consistent across all three of these stories today, which is quite rare, as you guys will know if you've listened or watched a lot of these stories. Normally, you know, people that are involved in these stories, quite a lot of them are quite stupid. Not just the individual that is entitled or, you know, is the main perpetrator in an individual story, but also the people surrounding it. You know, a lot of people tend to side with the idiots. I don't really know why. I've read so many stories where one member of a family, for example, is just a horrible person to another member of the family. And I get that can happen. But then for some reason, you know, the other family members side with the horrible one. And that I don't really understand at all. I mean, maybe they're all just dumb. That's probably the logical answer there. But thankfully in this story, well, in all three of these stories, there was only one sort of individual or two individuals, I suppose, in Di and Anne's case that were bad. And everyone else supported the good people, the original posters on Reddit. So that's good to see. And the same thing happened here, right? You know, the owner came out of nowhere and said, this is not happening. I'm going to go kick them out. And it's good that they backed you up, as I said. But yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's not even close to being an honest mistake. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. She knew 100%. I'm so confident in the fact that she knew that gazebo was yours, or at least it was attached to the property that you have been renting, or, you know, she doesn't even know. She doesn't even know you might own it. The questions were extremely weird. I do agree with you there. The fact that she's just gone bang, 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 asked you loads of questions, trying to get as much information as possible.
Very, very strange. Or was she trying to just, distract you from the fact that she's just said, I'm using your gazebo tomorrow and get your kayaks out of there? And then, the thing I love the most is the fact that she told you where to be for 6 hours. Just so good. Entitled college roommates were mad I didn't cook for them, and they wanted me to pay for the ingredients. I refused, and they threw my stuff in the trash. I debated telling this last story after the whole saga with my mother-in-law and ex-wife, but I mentioned it before so many times that I may as well tell it. But it will probably be my last post here. I know it seems I dealt with a lot of terrible people in my life. I suppose I was just a magnet for it. My terrible mother, my terrible ex-wife, my terrible mother-in-law passed away before becoming my ex-mother-in-law, my bad coworker that gave out my phone number to my mother, and lastly, some bad roommates from my college days. But beyond all of that, I haven't really dealt with much anyone else of note. Guys, in case you're wondering, this Redditor is someone whose stories I've read out quite a few times over the course of my channel. If you've been around for a while, you'll probably get one of the references they've just made there to one of the stories I've narrated. But this is a brand new one. Let's get into it. OP says, I've got good friends, a good job, and I'm physically active. But there were times I was just drawing in narcissists. Hopefully no more. Back in college, I had to deal with 3 bad roommate guys for 6 months. It was community college, so no dorm. Just a rundown apartment that looked right out of the 80s. I was balancing school and part-time work, so didn't have a lot of money. The funny thing is, I was literally the only one there who knew anything about cooking, much less did dishes. I wasn't one of those hardcore couponers, and there was really only 2 good stores in walking/biking distance. One a typical supermarket, the other a small discount food store. That's where I went the most. I was also no stranger to the local thrift store. My roommates mostly just ate junk food or whatever else they could grab that was already made. So, for obvious reasons, I couldn't keep leftovers. We also had fights about them not doing their share of the cleaning, but that was resolved later as well. 2 of these guys said they were friends before college, and the 3rd roommate fit right in with them for a while. The drama over the food first started when I made myself an egg sandwich for breakfast. 2 eggs over easy or medium, with your choice of cheese, bread, and mayo. It's actually pretty good, and a solid breakfast. One of my roommates saw me eating it and asked for one too. I apologetically said no because I was on a tight food budget and the frying pan was already in the sink. He rolled his eyes at me and groaned. I told him they were easy to make them himself if he bought the ingredients, but he balked at the notion. Another day, I made mashed soft-boiled eggs for breakfast. That attracted more attention. It's eggs boiled just enough to where the whites are cooked, but the yolk is still liquid. You then peel the shell off and mash the eggs in a bowl with a fork. It can be easy to mess up, and I only really succeeded half the time, but it's great with just basic seasoning and sometimes hot sauce. I haven't made it in a while, but I like to eat it on toast and sometimes over rice. I also made egg salad from time to time. Eggs were cheap and basically $1 a carton at the discount store. I'm also not a big fan of cereal as I had to eat it a lot growing up, and I prefer a warm breakfast without a lot of sugar. No matter how much I told my roommates they could cook their own food if they let me show them how, they just kept complaining that I made food that they weren't allowed to eat. Even though they wanted to eat good food at home, they were completely unwilling to put in any effort. Compared to these guys, I was the only broke person there. They all had the latest gaming consoles and new laptops. One of them even had a car. I had an old N64 and CRT TV that were pity gifts from friends years prior, a GameCube that I'd splurged on, and a used laptop I got secondhand. My roommates were near constantly gaming, watching YouTube, and being general couch potatoes when not in class. Hang on a second here, OP. What's wrong with watching YouTube? That's what I did, and still do to be fair, for many hours a day. Anyway, let's carry on. Sorry, a little bit sidetracked there. I think they thought I'd be a pushover at first, but I'm the kind of guy that seems chill till you push me one step too far. And they did this by stealing my game systems and my food. Here's what happened. One evening, I made something good for my dinner. I don't remember specifically what it was, but it might have been tilapia fillets. I ate those a lot. I even made them into spicy fish burgers. My roommates all ganged up on me over how their dinners always sucked unless they ate out. I mean, maybe just cook something nice then? Sorry to interject again, but just pull your finger out. If you want some nice food, make it. No one's going to make it for you. You've moved out of home now. It's insane. Anyway, microwave food all around for them on many nights. And they wanted me to finally make something nice for everybody. I told my roommates that, okay, if they each kicked in $5, I'd make us all a nice spaghetti dinner the next day. They agreed. My biggest mistake was not collecting the money from them in advance. So you're just asking for $5 from them to make a lovely meal. You know, they don't have to put any effort in and they just get to enjoy it. But okay, I see where this is probably going to go. I went out and got some ground beef, a jar of sauce, a loaf of garlic bread, the noodles, and canned green beans for a side. I whipped up a great dinner, but when I wanted the money from each of them, they laughed at me and refused. They played what they did off as a joke. When I didn't accept that answer, they told me they were sick of me flaunting my cooking around them and never sharing it. I gave them all the finger and told them I'd never cook for them again, and I stuck to that. They actually tried several more times, oh my goodness, the audacity, and I always refused. They even offered to pay me again, but still refused to pay me for the first time, so I'm sure they would have just pulled the same stunt again. Money or no money, I had my pride, and I meant it when I said I'd never cook for them again. They started acting like kids whose parents wouldn't feed them around me, and were pretty angry when I called them out on it. I wasn't obligated to be their caretaker. I didn't know what kind of homes these guys came from, but they certainly weren't used to not getting their way. Yes, exactly. I mean, we all know. I can picture these guys right now. I can picture myself even having a conversation with them. I know what they sound like. I know what they'd say. I know they'd just be like the biggest golden children ever. So stuck up. So spoiled as kids. It's just so obvious. Stop flaunting your cooking around us. It's unfair. It's the most insane thing I've ever heard. One day, I came home from work and found all my food missing from the fridge and cupboards, and none of my roommates were home. I was furious and I couldn't even confront them, so I just tried to go and play video games to unwind. But my consoles were missing. I lost my mind. I went to see an acquainted neighbor living in one of the apartments down the hall, and I asked advice from him because he was the one who sold me the GameCube. He had an evil idea and said that he'd use his digital camera to record my roommates when I confronted them, if I wanted, but only if I paid him $20. I didn't really have a choice but to agree. When my roommates finally came back, they were all smug, until they realized their gaming consoles and laptops were all missing. They flipped out, threatening to kick my butt, but I held my ground and told them I wanted my stuff back, or I'd never tell them where their stuff was. It turns out they bagged up all of my food and threw it in the dumpster outside a few hours earlier. Then they hid my game system and TV somewhere in the building before taking off to a party. I asked them why they did that, and they claimed it was because they'd been drinking all day since it was a weekend, then tried to say it was just a stupid drunken joke, while also telling me that I'd gone too far. I laughed and said they were enormous hypocrites and a-holes to say I went too far after what they did. I just got even. One of them looked like he was ready to hit me, and I drew all their attention to the nearby window. That's when they all saw our neighbor outside the window recording everything with his digital camera. He gave me an okay and took off down the fire escape before my roommates could do anything. I told them that guy just recorded their entire admission. That was bullying, theft, and underage drinking since we were all under 21 at the time. I told them I'd take that recording to the dean if they didn't make things right, because they wouldn't like having that stuff as part of their records. It was well known a couple of girls had been ousted from the college for roommate bullying the previous year, and of course drinking while underage is also a huge no-no. They all looked like the colour had drained from their faces. I told them I wanted my stuff back now and the cost of my food reimbursed. It was their move. They all took off outside as fast as they could. They came back with my game systems and games in a garbage bag, and even retrieved my food from the dumpster and expected me to just take it. But I refused to touch the food because it had been in the garbage for hours and I'd only accept cash. Additionally, they dropped my TV and it was broken, so I wanted that replaced too. They all hemmed and hawed, but finally asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted a new TV and $60 cash from each of them. They asked why that specific number. I said $50 each to replace my food they tossed, $5 each for the spaghetti dinner that they'd reneged on paying for, and then what remained for having to pay a guy to wait for 2 hours outside our window in the cold to record them. They all got their wallets out and begrudgingly gave me the money. They'd all previously bragged about how they had parents and scholarships footing their bills, so they easily had the cash. After getting paid, I told them where to find their stuff I'd hidden, and they stopped bothering me. One of them had a small flat screen TV in his stuff and just gave it to me to replace what they broke. And then we called things even. But after that, they avoided speaking to me if at all possible. Though eventually they all started getting on each other's nerves since I'd ruined their fun. They also never brought alcohol into the apartment again for fear that I'd snitch. And they did try to harass the guy I'd paid to record them. He said he'd take the recording to the dean himself if they bothered him again. So they were SOL to do anything about the situation. When the lease renewal came, 2 of the roommates opted to move out of the building because they and the third guy now hated each other. Yeah, they all hated me, but the 2 that left were especially the worst. But they liked each other just fine. Didn't bother to keep tabs on them once they were out, and the few classes we had together, they kept away from me in. And the one roommate that stayed actually made some improvement as a person, and made sure to tell the new guys who moved in not to mess with me at all. One of them was actually pretty cool though, and he liked cooking simple home meals like I did. He also liked Nintendo and bikes. He became my best friend and still is to this day. We even still play Mario Kart together when we can, and took up cycling together again once I separated from my ex-wife. He's been my greatest support ever, more so than any family I've ever had. Also, for those wondering where I'd hidden my roommate's stuff, I hid them all in their own suitcases that were already put away in the closet, which would have been one of the last places they'd have looked. They were all so annoyed it was all right there the whole time. Okay, there we go. That is the end of that one. Wow, what a story. And you know, I just feel bad for this Redditor, because you guys will know if you've seen any of my other episodes that have stories in from this user. They've been through the mill, I think, to say the least, in their life. And yeah, you know, they've finally gotten away from their parents, their horrible family, get to college, and we just met with horrible roommates like this. It can't get much worse. I mean, this is literally the definition of entitled people. Just like, I can't imagine doing this at all. It's just so crazy. Obviously, I went to university. I was in a dorm of my own, I suppose. People cooked different stuff. Some people cooked together. Some people cooked separately. Whatever. It was all chill. One thing that nobody ever did was say, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you're cooking a lovely meal and not making any for me for free. What are you doing?" Like, it just didn't happen. I don't understand how somebody can genuinely think like that. That's insane. And the funniest bit about all of this is saying it's actually unfair that you're doing this in front of me. It's just not right that you're doing this. I'm getting jealous to the extent that you need to stop doing this. It's very weird. Like, if you care that much, just learn to cook and just make some meals yourself. But I don't particularly love cooking. In fact, I would actually say that I don't dislike it. It's all right. I don't know, I can't be bothered a lot of the time. But if somebody was making a lovely meal in front of me, I wouldn't tell them to stop because I can't be bothered to make nice food. That's insane. Entitled Brother informed me that he would be taking my dog for 3 days without my permission. For those of you who aren't familiar with my stories, I am a 31-year-old woman, and I have a man-child entitled brother who is 26, who lives in the house I co-own with my mum. My mum has told him he has until May 31st to move out. This was originally posted 6 months ago in April of this year. I've been anxiously waiting for him to leave, doing my best to bide my time, but I finally reached the end of my rope, and for something that I'm not sure is the straw or the log that broke the camel's back. Last night, while I was in bed, my entitled bro informed me that he would be taking my dog, Spot, for 3 days on some fishing trip. I told him there's no way he could do that, but he said he wasn't asking, he was telling me. He said, "He's my dog too," and that he's entitled to take him whenever he pleases. But here's the thing. 9 years ago, my entitled brother demanded a dog. I begged my mum not to get him one. He had one previously, but neglected it, and my mum ended up rehoming it, for which he never let her hear the end of it. But of course, she caved, and the same problem persisted. My entitled brother never cared for Spots. I ended up taking over his care. I paid for his vet bills, I fed him, I took him to get groomed, etc. Things came to a head when we had to move in with family members, and they said we were not allowed to bring a dog. My entitled brother didn't do anything to find Spot a new home. It was my problem. I found him a foster home, where I visited him every day after my college classes ended, and I was able to get him back 2 years later when we finally had a place to live again. Additionally, when I moved out of my house for a year, Spot went with me. Spot sleeps with me every night and has my name on all of his records. He's now 10 and has arthritis. He takes meds for his hips and his stomach and needs frequent bathroom breaks. Oh, and he hates the water. So when my little bro said he wasn't asking me, he was telling me, I knew that Spot would be miserable and possibly in pain that whole trip. He hadn't asked or even mentioned taking Spot before, so he's due for a refill on his pills tomorrow. Had I known, I would have gotten the refill sooner. I tried telling him that Spot needs a lot of care, and he said, yeah, so just give me everything he needs. And I was so irritated. You wait until the night before to tell me this. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I could have just taken him and let you panic, but I was being nice telling you ahead of time. That did it. I don't know why, but every alarm bell went off in my head. I grabbed my purse, put on my slippers, and told Spot to get in the car. I drove to my fiance's house and slept here last night. I was going to move into my fiance's house this summer, but now I'm asking myself, why the heck am I waiting? Everyone on Reddit keeps asking me why I stay home, and right now, I can't remember any of the reasons that I had before. I'm done. My mum is staying out of it right now, and I'm glad because I genuinely don't care what she has to say. I know she doesn't want me to go, but I just can't take my entitled brother's little power trips. He can do whatever he wants to the house, punching holes in the walls, kicking the appliances, calling the house a dump, but I draw the line at him taking my dog without my permission. That's my baby, and I'm not going to just stand by while he does whatever he wants with my pet when I explicitly told him no, something that he rarely hears. P.S. I occasionally have asked my brother to let Spot out for bathroom breaks since he doesn't work until the afternoon, and his response is that he's always too busy to do that. He's given me no reason to trust him to care for my dog for even a few hours, let alone 3 days on a fishing trip. And also, one final edit here on the first post. My brother does not know where my fiance lives, and even if he did, my fiance's 2 huge German shepherds would devour him. Okay, so that was the initial post. Now, the great thing about this is that just 6 days ago at the time of recording, and remember I said that that initial post was made 6 months ago, we got an update. However, before we get into this, first of all, I don't think I've covered this person's stories before, but I feel like I really need to go back and have a look at their profile and see what stories and what accounts they've told about their brother in the past. This clearly is not the first post they've made, and I reckon there's probably quite a lot there. So let me know in the comments down below if after this you want me to go back on this person's profile and have a look at what they've posted on Reddit before. But without further ado, I'm excited to get into the update. As I said, just posted a few days ago and see what happened with Spot. Okay, so here we go. Let's get into the update. First of all, OP says, I would like to thank everyone for all their support, well wishes, and for reaching out to check on me and Spot. It was such a relief to know that so many of you would have had the same instinctual reaction to my situation. Yeah, I didn't give my thoughts there because, to be honest, it was pretty obvious. Spot is clearly your dog and would be in serious danger if he was left with your entitled brother. I think we can all agree on that. So, after many months, I finally have an update for you all. Firstly, my entitled brother has finally moved out. However, he didn't move out until the end of July. He was supposed to move out by May 31st, but my mother allowed him to push the date back twice. I wasn't pleased, but since I moved out abruptly in April, I couldn't let myself get worked up over it. I was focusing on making a safe space for Spot and myself. Secondly, since my entitled brother has moved out, my mother has made the house her own, and I am proud to say it's finally everything she envisioned it to be. The house looks immaculate now that my entitled bro isn't crowding her space. Actually, this is something that I'm going to have to go back and look at on this person's account. Was that talk about your entitled brother punching the walls and just trashing the house legit? I thought at the time it might be hyperbole, but wow, maybe it is legit. Anyway, let's carry on. She is very proud of all of her home improvement projects and always has something new that she wants to show me when I visit. She seems so happy. The only thing that concerns me is how uncharacteristically friendly my entitled bro has been acting with her since he moved out. More on that later. Thirdly, Spot is doing so much better since we went to live with my fiance and his 2 German shepherds. I think my fiance's dogs understood that Spot is older and not quite as athletic as them, but that didn't stop him from trying to keep up with them. After moving in, Spot's favourite pastimes include running around the huge yard, laying in the sun, and eating the little tasty nuggets that the chickens leave in the yard. Yes, I mean chicken poop. 4. If you have read this far and are wondering what took me so long to update, I do apologise for the delay, but I have a good reason. My fiance and I bought our first home. We fell in love with a tiny little house in our ideal area and have been working on renovating it. I'm very pleased to announce that we moved in last month. And if that wasn't good enough news for you, here is the biggest announcement of all. We got married. After all the hard work we put into the house, we knew it was the perfect place for us to tie the knot. We invited his dad, his siblings, and my mum over, and we had a quick ceremony in our living room amongst unpacked boxes and mix-match furniture. It was perfect. But this wouldn't be an Entitled People post without some entitled bro stories. Here are some of the highlights, for lack of a better term, of what I've dealt with since my last post. I mean, surely go with lowlights there, but to be honest, I think for us, reading this and listening to this, they are going to be highlights. For the 3 to 4 weeks after I moved out, my entitled bro would not stop asking, "Where's Spot? Where's my dog?" over and over. Now, I just ignored him, but while I was silent, he said a lot of very revealing things, such as, "I bet you won't bring Spot back because you're afraid I'll do the same thing to you," meaning taking off with Spot. Now, I wanted to point out the whole reason I felt the need to remove Spot was because he threatened to take my dog without my permission, but I didn't waste my breath. At one point, he got so worked up that he said, "Fine, don't tell me where Spot is. I'll find out," which only solidified my confidence that I made the right choice. Secondly, a couple of months ago, he had information that I needed in order to help our aunt with a task. My aunt asked him to please send me the info so I could complete the task for her. Now, he said he would, but never sent me anything, despite how many times she reminded him. It got to the point where the deadline was getting close, so I had to call and text him multiple times. He refused to give me anything, saying I needed to apologize for being so rude because I had the audacity to ask him for the info. I decided to act fed up and told him, forget it, someone else can do it. I then asked my cousin Molly to text him, saying that she was the one to contact instead. He sent the info to her instantly, and then of course I had Molly just forward it on to me. The look on his face when he later found out I was the one who took care of everything for my aunt was priceless. He enjoys having things to hold over my head. The final thing I will mention is my entitled bro was a nightmare for my mother until the day he moved out. He went through waves of giving my mum the silent treatment, then angrily hounding her for ruining his life, to having personal pity parties and saying things like he was so depressed and he didn't want to live anymore. My mum got so fed up that by his moving out day, she had no pity for him anymore, just actually secondhand embarrassment. But then he did something very strange. He was literally in the middle of yelling at her and blaming her for all of his shortcomings when he suddenly broke down and cried, saying he was so sorry for what he put her through. All he wants is to be loved by his mum and sister, and asking, "What would you do if I killed myself?" My mum said she thought it was a miracle from God, and I tried to gently ask her if it wasn't more likely that it was just a manipulation tactic. She said she is choosing to believe that this is a sign that her son is finally changing for the better. I find it very hard to believe. So now he acts as if he was never the hexspawn that plagued our home for 8 years, and my mum is so happy because she thinks that now her son is reformed. I think it's more likely that he's just trying to stay in her good graces because he wants to use her as a safety net. My mum claims she would now never take him back in unless it was a true emergency, but I don't know about that. That is the only thing about my entitled brother that makes me uneasy to this day. Other than that, I have no interest in dealing with him and will not be including him in anything. He does not have my address, and my relatives know not to share it with him. Although I have had to deal with a lot of drama these past few months, I am so relieved that I left that tumultuous home life when I did. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have had a safe space for myself or Spot. I wouldn't finally have a home of my own with someone who loves me completely. And I wouldn't have married the sweetest, most supportive man I've ever met. I'm so grateful to be able to write this happy update on my couch in my home with my husband at my side and my sweet Spot laying his head in my lap. Thank you again for being here for me and for waiting so patiently for an update. I hope it was worth the wait. Thank you. Okay, so there we go. A fantastic ending to this one. I'm glad that everyone seems, well, you especially seem to be getting on well. Spot sounds really happy. You obviously are. And your husband, yeah, fantastic news. I do agree with you though. Like, there's no way that just in one sort of split second does somebody suddenly realize how horrible they've been for the past 8 years and go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I just don't feel loved by my mum and sister. Well, maybe there's a reason you don't feel loved by your mum and sister, and that's that 8 years of just pure entitlement. There's no way that somebody could just do that for 8 years and then suddenly be like, oh, sorry, I didn't actually realize what I was doing all this time.
No, I don't believe it for 1 second. It's definitely a manipulation tactic. So this was posted on February the 15th, 2022 on r/AmITheJerk. Would I be the jerk if I forced my mum to kick my brother out? I am a 29-year-old woman, and my brother, who is 23, lives in the same house as my mother and I. My mum and I bought this house a few years ago, and he's been living here for most of that time. He goes on and on about how much he just hates it here and can't wait to get his own place, yet seems to have zero initiative to actually do that. On top of this, he's a raging jerk to me and my mother. My mum is disabled, so she can't work, so I pay for 75% of all expenses, including all of our property taxes and house insurance. My brother has no education and he works part-time at a local store, contributing only to his portion of the auto insurance and the electricity bill. He goes out of his way to pick fights with my mum and, now that I have recently moved back home, with me. I had lived with my boyfriend all of 2021, but he recently broke up with me and I moved back home. I'm obviously still hurting since the breakup is fresh, and I just want to live in a house that doesn't feel like a war zone. Whenever my mum and I see my brother walking up the pathway, we both retreat into our rooms because we just can't deal with him and his moods. Tonight he decided he didn't want some of my items crowding his door and was having a meltdown because a few of my items that I moved back from my ex's house were in his way. I had to get up out of bed and I asked exactly what he wanted moved so I could get them out of the way and get back to sleep. He started to berate me, saying stuff like, "Shut the F up, go cry on your pillow, you're pathetic, you're just upset because your boyfriend is cheating on you in your old house." Which makes me laugh because when he went through his breakup, I kindly listened and gave him plenty of advice when he asked for it. I've asked my mum many times if we can please kick him out because he owns no part of this house and he is the worst part of our daily lives. My mum acknowledges that he is the worst, but she doesn't want to kick him out because he's her son. She says I should just ignore him and stop bickering with him, but I feel like ignoring him is enabling him. I want him gone. Look, I love him because he's my brother, but the kid is seriously the worst human being I know, and neither my mum nor I need that energy in our house. I'm not sure what I can do to convince my mum to kick him out, but I'm getting to the point where I may have to live on my own. This is putting me in a horrible position because if I leave, I'll have to stop helping my mum financially, which she says she would understand. But if I stay, I'll have to deal with my nightmare of a brother. So, would I be the jerk if I forced my mum to kick him out? Okay, so there we go. That is where this story all began. And yeah, knowing now what I know and what we're going to come to very soon in the rest of this episode, and of course, the two stories that I read previously, yeah, obviously you wouldn't be the jerk here. But I'm just going to try and give some comments just purely based on what I've just read there. And yeah, still you wouldn't be the jerk. This guy just sounds terrible. He is also 23. It's not as if he's 16 and would have nowhere else to go. I mean, he wouldn't have anywhere else to go, which is tough. But you are 23. You can't expect to live in someone else's house at 23. Look, it's lovely that he is able to do that. And I mean, I was going to say that surely deep down he is grateful, but actually he's probably not. Maybe to wake him up and to you know, give him some sort of like jump start or like kick in the head to actually get going in life, he needs to be sent out of the house. I'm just not even sure how you'd even begin to do that. Like, it's quite hard to force your own brother out of your house, but yeah, you're definitely not the jerk for wanting him gone. Okay, now moving on to this user's second post. Brother emotionally scarred because I changed my name. This was posted 2 years ago on February the 19th, 2023. So that's almost an entire year after the original post on r/AmITheJerk. In fact, it is over a year after that post. So now OP is 30 and her brother is 24. She says, "We have never gotten along, mostly because he's entitled and thinks the world revolves around him. My parents have never gotten along either, which contributed greatly to why I grew up fairly down to earth, and my brother is a self-centered man-child. Recently, I changed my last name to my mother's maiden name. I had my dad's last name before, because I've never liked the last name I was given, and I've always wanted my name to reflect the family that raised me. My brother recently found out that I did this, and said, 'Oh, so you don't want to be my sister anymore? That's my last name. You don't want to be associated with me? Wow. I guess we know what side you're choosing. I can't believe you do this to me. So you're telling me that I'm supposed to be ashamed of my name then? Is that it? Did you even once stop to think how this was going to affect me?' Funnily enough, I answered, I didn't think of you at all. Yikes. Okay, so there we go. That is the second post. Now, I would like to move on to the third one, but unfortunately it's actually been deleted from r/AmITheJerk. It's been removed by the moderators there, probably because it has some sort of rules against guns. Actually, I'm not sure. It says here that the post violates Rule 12, that posts should focus strictly on actions in an interpersonal conflict and not an individual's position on a broad social issue. Anyway, look, the title's on screen right now. Would I be the jerk if I asked my brother to keep his guns in his room? So, you know, the reason this was probably deleted was because of, I guess, it got to a debate about gun control and gun laws in America, etc., which isn't allowed on here for whatever reason. But, yeah, I think we can glean enough from the title of this one, and it helps us to sort of understand, again, a little bit more about who OP's brother is. I think keeping guns is one thing. Keeping them across the house, or maybe even asking his sister to keep them in her room as well, is crazy. Look, I know that a lot of you guys probably have different sort of views to me on gun control. I'm in the UK. I'm happy about that, is all I'll say. But yeah, this was the third post from OP, and it's been deleted. And sadly, Wayback Machine, if you know what that is down at the time of recording, so I can't get it. And I don't even think it would be on there anyway, because it was deleted pretty quickly. But there we go. Let's move on to the fourth post. Okay, so this one was posted on r/EntitledPeople on August the 8th, 2023. Entitled brother demands I thank him for cleaning my mess. So OP is now 31 and her brother is 25. She says, my brother has always been an entitled brat. He's lived in my house. My mum and I bought and renovated it for 5 years now. So, I mean, let's just go back to the would I be the jerk question that was 2 years before this one, where OP's brother was 23. Clearly, they didn't get him to move out, and it's been 2 years since that moment. Anyway, OP says, he didn't start contributing to the household bills until about 2 years ago, and he makes sure to throw that in mine and my mum's faces every month as if it's some big favour. He's always complained about living here and how miserable he is because he's treated so poorly. He's treated like a prince by my mum. And the house is such a mess, that's his quote. His room used to be our studio space, where my mum and I kept our workspaces and supplies. I'm a designer and my mum is an artist. When he moved in, we turned our living room into a makeshift office for ourselves, so our supplies are kept on various shelving units in our living space. My brother has always complained about how cluttered and dirty the house is, and how he hates living here, blah blah. I've told him repeatedly that if he doesn't like it, he doesn't have to live here. He said I should accommodate him instead, because he's family, and family should respect each other. It's a small house, and we were doing our best with what little space we have, but he says it's embarrassing that we don't have a space for a couch and TV. We actually used to until he moved in. 2 months ago, he announced that he is being forced to move in with his girlfriend because he can't live like this anymore. Because my mother and I are just so awful for asking him to help with the bills, and we have the audacity to have our workspaces in the living room. Since he informed us of this, he hasn't packed a single box, and he refuses to give me any kind of time frame. But I overheard him telling his dad he expects to move out in September. Today I came home to a bunch of stuff, including kitchen items like sodas and snacks, stacked in my room and on my work desk, which had my laptop and my design drawings on the tabletop. I was confused and annoyed because I was afraid they'd been crushed. I asked my mum if she did that. She told me it was my brother. I went to him to ask why the heck he did that, and that I didn't appreciate him moving my stuff and potentially ruining my work. He went off on me, saying he made an executive decision to finally clean up. I laughed because he has his own bathroom and the largest bedroom, and they're both filthy. He decided my mum's and my things needed to be allocated to our spaces and kept out of the communal spaces, the kitchen and dining area. His logic was, since I'm the only one who consumes certain sodas and snacks, that they need to be kept in my room. None of his foods or drinks were taken out of the kitchen, by the way. Anything that he didn't deem worthy of being in the communal spaces, he just tossed into a pile on mine and my mother's desks and in our rooms. Mind you, his shoes, moving boxes and bags are all over the hallway. My mum and I always have to step over his trash when we walk by his room, and we don't move anything. I told him he needs to respect our things and our space, but he said it's not for me to dictate. I said, yes it is, it's my house, but he wouldn't hear it. He screamed at me, saying I had to thank him for cleaning my mess and that I better apologize for being so ungrateful. I reminded him he's moving out,
So why would he be bothered about how my house looks? I told him I can't organize anything until he moves out, and he lost his mind, saying, "How freaking dare you? I guess you can't wait for me to leave." I rolled my eyes and told him that not everything I say and do is a personal attack on him. He was screaming at me, saying that my power trip is my way of abusing him. I got fed up by that point and walked away to avoid losing my cool. It takes a very deluded person to make demands and set rules that never seem to apply to him in someone else's home. The entitlement. Okay, so there we go. A little insight there into the living situation between OP, her brother, and her mum before the content from yesterday's episode, the latest 2 stories in this saga. Yeah, it seems to me, and this is probably quite obvious from yesterday's episode, that this has just been a continuing thing for a number of years. And it sort of adds to the point that I was trying to make at the end of today's episode, that you don't just suddenly change your whole opinion after 8 years of being as entitled as your brother clearly is, OP. Like, he has been a terrible person, a terrible housemate, a terrible brother, seemingly, for a very, very long time, and we're not even at the end yet. So we're now, what, 4, technically really 3 posts into this. There are 2 more to go in this episode, and then the 2 from yesterday's episode, until we have the sort of the finished story, I guess, up to now. So let's jump into the next one. Am I the jerk for asking how my boyfriend's convo with my mum about us getting married went? This was posted on February the 22nd, 2024. So just 8 months ago now at the time of recording. I'm in a wonderful relationship, but have a very tumultuous home life. My brother and I do not get along because he is insanely toxic, but he lives with my mother and I. We co-own the house because she can't find it in her heart to kick him out, and I get no say in the matter. It's been 6 years and he's finally taking steps to move out, supposedly leaving in May. The trouble started when my boyfriend took my mother out to tell her he was going to ask me to marry him. As they chatted, my mother devoted about 20% of the conversation to talk about my brother. Now, the first portion was understandable. She wanted to inform him of the family dynamic he would be marrying into. I have a very strained relationship with my father and my brother because they're both narcissistic jerks. She wanted to make sure he knew what he was getting himself into. But then she said she wanted my boyfriend's help to get me to be the bigger person and mend my relationship with my brother. And she said she'd like his help to get through to my brother, such as asking my boyfriend to talk to my brother on her behalf. When my boyfriend told me this, I felt gutted. Putting all of that responsibility on his shoulders and focusing on my toxic brother was so hurtful. And what made it worse was she kept saying, "I know he's a jerk, but..." Now, despite how angry I was, I decided not to talk to her about it. I decided that whatever her motives were, I wouldn't let it put a damper on our moment. However, my mum came up to me yesterday and asked if I knew about the lunch she and my boyfriend had. I told her yeah. She asked if I was mad at her, and I was honest. I said I had been because of her devoting so much of the conversation to my brother. She exploded at me. She said I had no right to ask about her convo with my boyfriend because it was private and she didn't know she was getting graded for what she said. I told her I reacted the way I did because 1, it was meant to be about me and my boyfriend, and 2, my brother is not his responsibility. She said, "Your brother is going to be his brother now." She acted as if their convo was supposed to be a secret. She was seething because I had the audacity to ask my boyfriend how it went. Why wouldn't I want to know that? And unless she and my boyfriend agreed it was an only between them conversation, I don't see why she could be so angry at my boyfriend for telling me. I don't know. Am I being self-centered here? Am I the jerk for asking my boyfriend how their convo went in the first place? Or am I the jerk for being honest instead of lying to keep the peace? Okay, interesting post here. And actually, this is the first insight I think we've had in every post that I've read from this user into her mum, I would say. Now, you can probably argue that I've been potentially a little bit naive in not focusing on the mother at all until this point and her enabling behavior. But to be fair, like the bad guy in all of this really has been the entitled brother. But this is the first insight into sort of explaining and yeah, us understanding how your brother has been allowed to be so entitled for his entire life, and shows us why he is as entitled as he is. Clearly, yeah, I mean, if we didn't know already, his mum has been enabling him his entire life, which is just pretty sad to see, to be honest. But yeah, just actually answering the questions that OP's asked at the end, First of all, are you being self-centered? Absolutely not. I mean, that's obvious. Then, are you the jerk for asking your boyfriend how the conversation went in the first place? No, of course not. I mean, like, if my like girlfriend or my fiance or, you know, whatever, the person that I'm going to marry at some point, obviously, was having a conversation with my parents about what that was going to look like, I'd obviously be like, oh yeah, how'd it go? Like, obviously. And I'd find it very weird if she then came back to me and said, yeah, it was all right, but I'm actually not allowed to tell you because your mum and dad don't want me to say. I'd be like, okay, that's extremely weird behavior from them. But then the final question, am I the jerk for being honest instead of lying to keep the peace? No, because what does lying to keep the peace actually achieve in the long term? Nothing, in my opinion. I think, yeah, the more and more we hear from OP about her family, the more and more we realise that maybe, despite the fact that her mum probably is quite nice in general, maybe she's the only one that actually has some sort of common sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm going too far. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh on her mum, but I don't know. People who are entitled are often only entitled, or at least are entitled mainly because of other people enabling their behavior. Like, it's very rare that you just see a random entitled person and they'll just be entitled for the sake of it. No, I don't think anyone is genuinely born entitled. Normally, it's other people in their life that have made them like that, or things that have happened to them at the very least. But yeah, there we go. Now let's move on to the final post of this episode. What should we even call this? Like, it's sort of like the prequel to yesterday's episode, I suppose. This one was posted just 7 months ago. Entitled brother finally got what he deserved. I am a 31-year-old woman, and I'm in shock over the throwdown that I witnessed between my mum, who was in her 60s, and my entitled brother. Ooh, this is interesting. Maybe the mum does have a backbone after all. Let's see what happens. My brother has been mooching off of my mum and she and I co-own our house, since 2017. He lived rent-free for 4 years. Finally, my mum managed to force him to pay his form of rent by paying some utility bills, a total of about $450 a month, since 2021. He's never paid his bills willingly. Every month he demands to know why he has to pay the amount and demands proof of the cost, as if my mum was trying to swindle him for some reason. And every time he's finally given us the money for the bills, he's told us he was bailing us out since we must be broke. Why else would we be making him pay for us? Now, recently he's been going off about how he can't wait to leave the house and he wants to save his money to move out, but he simply can't with the cost of all these bills weighing him down. My mother told him, since he's so serious about moving out, she will gladly pay for his portion of the bills. She works seasonally, and all he'd need to pay was his car insurance. She said she would give him until May 31st to save up as much as he could. He'd then need to move out. Since that agreement was made, my entitled bro has gone on 2 trips out of state. One was a 4-day bachelor party in New Orleans. He's gone to poker nights with his friends multiple times, refuses to so much as wash a dish, and leaves a greasy mess wherever he goes in the house. Meanwhile, my mum has worked 6 days a week to make enough money to cover his expenses, and yet he hasn't thanked her once. Every time she asks him to do the simplest task, he ignores her or claims he forgot, despite how often she reminds him. Today, she finally snapped. His one bill that he's responsible for was due 4 days ago and he never paid her. She texted him and reminded him verbally many times. She asked via text one last time today, and he finally responded by asking her to give him a receipt so she can prove his insurance cost what she claimed it cost, and he never sent the money. She lost it and said she's sick of catering to him without so much as a thank you. She said she wants peace, and he is no longer worth the trouble she goes through. She said she is removing him from the car insurance tomorrow, and that he no longer has until the end of May to move out. He actually has 3 weeks. That's it. And remember, guys, this was posted on March the 21st, 2024. So instead of the end of May, we're looking at halfway through April. Half the time. Actually, no, way less than half the time. 3 weeks rather than what? 9 weeks or so. She's threatened to kick him out before and hasn't gone through with it yet. But this time felt different because I've never seen her go nuclear like that before. And my entitled bro must have felt that same way because he went through the 5 stages of grief about 100 times during that fight. He screamed, cried, accused, name-called, tried to pull me in to defend him, tried to pull in his dad, who lives 2 hours away, to defend him, tried to call my mum's sisters to defend him, claimed getting his own insurance was an emotional burden, claimed she needs professional help because she is obviously out of her mind, said that she obviously doesn't care about him, otherwise why would she so cruelly deprive him of such valuable resources? He went on and on for 3 hours and she didn't budge. I don't want to get my hopes up that she'll stick to that 3-week deadline, but this is the closest she's come to evicting him. I hope this will scare him into leaving before she has to. Well, there we go. You know what? I'll hold my hands up. I was wrong about this woman. Maybe I was right, to be fair, actually, in a way. But she has just got to the end of her tether, which I respect. I pay rent, so I own this house. Backstory. My parents used to own a house on a big bit of land. When my older siblings went away for college, the house felt too big for our needs. So my parents decided to sell the house, but not all the land. They built a smaller house on the part of the land they didn't sell. A few years afterwards, we moved to a city 2 hours away and kept the house as a place to go during the summer. My parents decided to rent the house as it was well located and had a really nice view. Renting it meant that they could use the money towards the mortgage and taxes. Enter our Karen. Karen and her boyfriend rented the place so she could be closer to her work. From the start, my dad made it clear. The place was for rent, and my parents planned on living in that house after retiring. At that time, both of them planned to work for at least another 20 years. They would of course notify Karen in advance when they wanted to take back the house, so she'd have plenty of time to find a new place. In return, they asked that she notify them in advance should she wish to move out so they could find a new renter. The lease also stated that my parents would have some of their things in a locked storage in the basement as well as in a shed on the property, and that they would always call Karen before dropping by to get something out of the storage, which was in the basement and connected by the garage, so they wouldn't even disturb Karen. For a few years, Karen was an okay renter. She paid the rent through a check each month. Yeah, she smoked inside and didn't take care of the land, but my dad didn't make a fuss about it. The real trouble started after around 12 years. Every few months, Karen's checks would bounce back. My dad would call her to ask about it. Karen would profusely apologize and rectify the situation. Then it became every other month, until it was every month. Finally, my dad had enough and called her about the lease and the rent. During the call, Karen argued that since she had been paying rent for the past 12 years, the house was now hers. My dad was shocked since that came out of nowhere. He tried to explain to her that she was renting the place like they'd agreed since the beginning. Karen went on a female dog fit about how she'd paid so much over the years and she was the one living there and taking care of the place, which she wasn't at all, and therefore it should be hers. She threatened to take my dad to court. Now, where I live, there are many laws which protect the renter, and it can be a real female dog to deal with when you have a nasty renter. My dad hired a lawyer to make sure everything was in order. After a meeting with Karen, where the lawyer was present, she realized she didn't have much of a case, since all paperwork concerning the house was in my dad's name and the original lease clearly stated it was a rental. My dad offered to her to stop renting, should she wish, after the whole debacle, but she actually wanted to stay in the house. He made her sign a new lease, where it stated, again, that this was a rental, and that should she not pay or cause trouble again, my dad would give her the shortest possible notice of eviction allowed by the law. Karen is still renting the house after almost 20 years. My parents are not close to retiring yet. I do hope it won't turn into a trash show when they decide to take back the house. Okay, now before we get into the 5-year update on this one, OP firstly did leave this comment below the original post saying, the question, why did your dad let her sign a new lease, has come up a lot from you guys, the people of Reddit, asking down below. So this is what I will say. 1, I don't have the slightest clue why. As I was a kid, I was a lot younger when this happened, I wasn't really kept in the loop much. It was also not the reaction I'd expect my dad to have, since he is very respectful to others and expects the same in return. Secondly, I do know the legal actions he took when she threatened to take him to court did protect himself and many future problems that might arise. I do appreciate all the concerns and the advice, although I do think my dad had a good reason to keep her as a tenant from hell after everything that went down. Okay, very interesting last line here, and I don't really understand it. Surely your dad didn't have a good reason to keep her as a tenant. Like, I kind of get it. Like, maybe at the start, it was fine, and, you know, money was coming in, and yeah, it was a little bit of effort eventually, but, like, she was paying most of the time. But then surely by this point, when it's getting as ridiculous as this and you're having to chase her every single month. And then on top of that, you're getting her threatening you to go to the police or whatever about it and make it into a real issue. Surely at that point, it's worth the extra effort to say, okay, you're done. Let's get another renter in. I know landlords don't like the turnover of having new renters, but when it's someone like this, that makes no sense to me at all. Surely you'd get her gone. I don't know. I'm not your dad, OP. Just makes the most sense to me. However, the beauty of your dad continuing to have her as a renter, as a tenant, is that we got this update 5 years later, posted just 3 days ago at the time of recording. Okay, so here we go. Here is the update. OP says this is an update of a post from 5 years ago. Some people asked in the comments what was going on, and there has been new developments in the last few months. So here is the timeline. Since the beginning, there was a mutual agreement between Karen and my parents that they would both give a 6-month notice before she moved out, or my parents would like to take back the house. So let's move forward to the last week of June 2024. My dad received a phone call from a representative of Karen. Due to her financial circumstances, she was giving a month's notice before moving out. My parents were surprised by the short notice, of course, but didn't actually really mind it as they were looking forward to taking back the place. Skip forward to the last week of July. Karen was set to move out, but then asked for a week extension as she couldn't find anybody to help her move. My parents agreed. She was now set to move out by August the 3rd. Skip forward to August the 4th. With the car all loaded up, with essentials, dinnerware and cutlery, small furniture, we left for our first trip to the house. The plan was to look at the state of the place, clean up a little bit, and take measurements for the remodeling my parents are planning. As we get to the place, we notice a small sign in the driveway to advertise for a garage sale at the house. We figured she'd forgotten to take it down, but we were wrong. As we get to the house, we can see boxes and furniture through the windows. Cue the shocked Pikachu face as she answered the door. It turns out she hadn't moved out yet, and she meant to call my dad to let him know, but of course she never did. She clearly didn't expect us to drop by so soon after her supposed moving date. My parents were both extremely annoyed, but they gave her an additional week and expectations of payments for the week she overstayed. Your parents, by the way, are extremely lenient. I mean, I'm pretty sure other landlords would say, no, you're done. Like, just get out or I'm calling the police. You're now 2 weeks overdue. Pay us for those 2 weeks and GTFO. But no, your parents apparently are too nice for that. Let's move forward. Honestly, it's bordering on like genuinely being too nice to the detriment of them. Like, there's being nice and then there's kind of getting walked over. Let me know in the comments, by the way, guys, what you think about that one. But yeah, August the 18th now, let's move forward a couple of weeks. My parents received the confirmation that she left the week she was supposed to. They had a neighbor drop by to make sure her things were really gone, but we didn't have the time to make the trip until a week after. We found the place in a much better shape than we expected. Of course, it's not in perfect condition, as it clearly has the wear and tear of a place that's been lived in for years. It needs a good cleanup, some fresh paint in most of the rooms, and a lot of work on the land. There's also plans of remodeling a bit to make an additional room on the first floor, so my parents don't have to go up the stairs all the time. So, turning over a new leaf. This ends the whole chapter. My parents got the summer house back years before they expected, and although the renter was difficult until the end, she mostly went away without all the trouble we expected. My parents are happy to take back the place and are looking forward to all the projects they have for it. They've been almost every week to clean and sort through the things we had stored there. My dad did a fresh paint of coat in some of the rooms, and they're looking for furniture. My brother went once and started to clear up some of the trees to get back the awesome view we used to have from the kitchen. My dad bought an old lawn tractor to help with the yard work and is excited like a little boy with a new shiny toy. We'd like to get the place cleaned and ready to hopefully spend Christmas camping there, as we most likely won't have a lot of furniture yet. Okay, fair enough. Maybe I was wrong actually there. Maybe the best course of action was what your parents did. Just being lenient, trying to make as little fuss as possible, perhaps in the knowledge that if they were really aggressive and, told Karen, like, actually, this is ridiculous, get out, that potentially could have caused a lot more drama than just doing what they did in the end and saying, you know what, fine, maybe we don't get paid for these couple of weeks, maybe she stays for a little bit longer, maybe it's more annoying in the short term, but long term, it's better if she just goes. I don't know. I'm still sort of the belief that she should have been kicked out a long time ago. She seemed like a bad tenant. But yeah, what do you guys think in the comments down below? Do you think OP's parents were just way too lenient here? Or ultimately, they were able just to have sort of one tenant the whole duration of the time they were renting the house, which is always a good thing. You know, they didn't have to do that much work, and overall, it wasn't that annoying. I'm not sure. I think it would have been horrible and a lot of stress, but if they were able to manage it, which they seem to, then who am I to say that was a bad thing? Okay, now moving on to our next Entitled People story. Group admin removed me without warning, then reached out asking for a free trip. So this happened a few years ago during COVID. I don't remember which year, when I worked as a deckhand and lifeguard on a snorkel excursion boat. I'm a freediver and on occasion also spearfish, albeit rarely. A little before COVID, my friend, who is a photographer, added me to a dive group she's part of. I was excited as I didn't have many diving buddies and didn't like diving solo, so I thought I might make some new dive buds. My partner and I live with his parents, and his mother is super high risk for complications, so we were pretty strict about COVID precautions and social distancing. I decided to join one of the dive days with about 7 other people in the dive group. I figured it would be easy to social distance. It was my first time meeting these people, aside from my original friend. Before we even got in the water, I started to realize they might not be my kind of people. I tried to meet people, but most weren't interested in chatting with me. They made a circle to talk, and I ended up standing awkwardly on the outside, uninvolved, because they were almost shoulder to shoulder, and I needed to social distance. I tried to be involved in the topics, but it felt like cool story bro kind of thing, so I just kind of stopped trying. Well, after that dive, I decided I'd likely wait till COVID passed more to dive with them, unless it was fewer than 3 people, since none of them took any precautions. I still check in on the group a few times a week, in case something small was planned and I felt like joining, but most times it was larger groups or scheduling didn't align. Since I was reading the chats, I learned a bit more about this group, mainly that many in the group are vegan. They didn't like me asking if anyone would like to join a spearfishing session. A quarter to a half of them were anti-vax, that most were either photographers or influencers. I did have a few good friends in the group, but I'd met them prior to the group. I worked on the boat 3 days a week, but my captain wanted to hire another person to work the other 2 to 3 days a week. So I offered up the job in the dive group, since I knew mostly everyone could free dive the minimum 40 feet required for the job. Only one person was interested, but scheduling didn't work out. The admin of the group, we will call Maisie, ended up removing me from the group without warning. I didn't find out till I tried to find the chat and it was gone, so I asked her about it. She said she removed me because I wasn't participating in dives right now. I told the group I was only going to do 2 to 3 man dives till vaccines were available and or COVID was less of a concern. This was because most of the dives had been larger groups or scheduling issues, so yeah, I hadn't been participating much. She said she needed to make room for people to join the group that wanted to and that would actually participate. Ouch, but okay, fair. Sorry, I've got to interject here. That's not fair. Why is there a limit on a group chat? Like, that's not a thing. It doesn't make any sense. Let's carry on. I thought the fact that she didn't tell me when she did it was weird, but I just moved on since I still had my prior friends. Now, I never told them I also run the social media page for the boat company I work for. And a few days after getting booted from the group, I get a message to our company's social media from Maisie. Is she inquiring about the available position we need filled to help us get more business and survive COVID? Nope. She wants a free half-day excursion to the neighboring island in return for exposure, telling us how her followers will be booking our trip and she'll bring a boost of profits by promoting us. I can't say I was surprised. Disappointed? Yeah. I don't remember exactly what I wrote back to her, but this is the closest I can recollect. Hello, thanks for reaching out to our company. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, our capacity has been cut in half to adhere to social distancing requirements. This has led to our demand rising, since what we could previously accommodate in one excursion must now be split into 2 trips a day at max capacity restrictions. You promised that exposure will increase our bookings, but without a contract showing hard numbers and an agreement to reimburse us if projections fall short of the agreed amount, we cannot warrant a free half-day excursion for exposure over a paying guest. We're also short-staffed and only able to operate 3 days a week at this time, limiting our income even more under the already financial strain of COVID. Local businesses dealing with these setbacks is widely known about, and we find it in bad taste to request free excursions or products from small businesses under this well-known strain. We can offer you a resident discount, but that's all. We hope you decide to support small businesses in this time. However, we understand that COVID has put financial strain on all. We do have positions open to apply for if you've had trouble finding work and making ends meet in these hard times. She never responded, and I never talked to or saw her again. About 6 months to a year later, the COVID restrictions lightened a bit for travel, and our location was drowning in tourists. Our already high demand skyrocketed, and we were doing 3 to 4 trips a day, nearly back to back, because we were still short-staffed. I busted my butt, and I made bank. I was able to save up for a big purchase a few years faster than planned, and all I could think about was how if she'd taken up the job offer instead of asking for free stuff, they'd have a great job on the water and be making some great money. Well, that right there, in my opinion, ladies and gents, is the problem with influencers or people that call themselves influencers. Like, let's be honest, I don't think anyone that has any self-respect that is in sort of content creation or is sort of an Instagrammer or something like that calls themselves an influencer. I think they just use a different word. I think right now, like influencer, the term, has so many negative connotations because of people like this and people doing things like this that I would just never want to be sort of painted with that brush. I just call myself personally like a content creator or just media person because, you know, although in theory, yes, if you have a following, you can influence, and therefore I suppose you are an influencer. Like the term is just so disgusting because of people like this. And yeah, to ask for free stuff, I suppose is fine. For exposure, I'm not 100% anti it. You know, if someone does have a following, then it can actually be worth it. But you know, it depends on the individual, of course, and what they're actually offering. But to do it during COVID as well, when you know full well that everyone is struggling, and obviously a business that is run by, well, tourism, people physically being on the boat and doing stuff like that, like that obviously cannot run during COVID, is going to be struggling. Yeah, that's I agree with OP. That is in really poor taste. And the fact of the matter is, and what makes this great and potentially, yeah, good karma, is that you've made a load of money and she probably hasn't. I don't know. She might have done. It's just unlikely, let's be honest. But yeah, if she had just taken you up on the job offer and said, you know, actually, yeah, I could do some work through COVID, then she'd be doing unreal right now, and most likely she's not. I mean, the thing is, in general, and this is what, like, I don't think I've ever actually, that's not true. I have had some free stuff given to me before, but it's always as part of like a deal where they get something back, the company. I think the best thing to do is, if you are like an influencer and you want free stuff, which is fine, like you can get free stuff, have some sort of agreement in which like you will hit a certain number of affiliate links, or, you know, you will send a certain amount of traffic their way using your link. And if you don't hit that, then be prepared to sort of financially reimburse them for giving you the free stuff. I think that's fair. And if you back your audience to do that, and you back the fact that you are an influencer, then you should do that. Getting free stuff like this or just demanding free stuff, yeah, I don't love it. Now for our last, but by far not least, Entitled People story of this episode. If you guys have been missing me doing a Karen voice, or just, you know, changing my voice up a little bit for some certain characters in these stories, then you're gonna love this. Crazy entitled couple tries to run our delivery van off the road, then demands free catering. This happened sometime last year, but due to it being an open incident, I held off on sharing it until now. In late winter / early spring of last year, I got a call in from the delivery driver that someone had brake checked them on the main road into town, then sped off. Luckily, it was after delivery was completed, so nothing delicate was on board. I take down the plate, vehicle info, all the standard stuff for an incident of road rage. But before I can finish up the call, the brake checkers actually called in to our main office. Before I could complete the standard spiel, they immediately cut me off, screaming, "Hello, you've reached XYZ Kate. Your jerk driver tried to run us off the road." Now, I know our driver. They are the least aggressive, most careful driver I've ever seen. They regularly deliver precarious items like wedding cakes without so much as disturbing them. If anything, they're too cautious. They're not running people off the road. Excuse me, sir, but I don't think our delivery van would have tried to run you off the road intentionally. Were you perhaps traveling in the vehicle's blind spot? There are warning signs on the delivery van to avoid lingering in blind spots when the driver signals. This is about as far as I get trying to be diplomatic. Then the entitled woman gets involved. "Why are you defending this jerk? This is some minimum wage idiot that probably doesn't even belong in this country. Yeah, your driver tried to kill us, and you're making excuses? This is outrageous." "Sir, ma'am, please calm down. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of things. Do you know who I am? I'll shut your whole operation down. You listen to me, you little R-word. You better be ready to give us some hefty compensation, or we'll take this to the police, and we'll sue you. We have a party coming up, and if you'd agree to cater it for free, we might let this all go." I have no doubt the look on my face when I heard that out of the woman must have been one of the most exasperated faces I've ever made. At this point, I'm just pausing to try and process this bizarre demand. "Hey, stupid, did you even hear what my wife was saying? Do you speak proper English?" It's at this point I've had enough. I'd put the pieces together as soon as they complained about road rage. "Are you license plate ABDC 12345 gold 4-door crossover? Are you the jerk," insert racial slur, "driving that big stupid van?" "No, I'm not. But the driver called in you having brake checked him just before you called in. We just tried to stop the driver because he was a danger to everyone on the road." Uh-huh. Well, we will see what the facts are once the vehicle's camera footage is reviewed. Our delivery vehicle is equipped with 360-degree recording. Just let me pull that up. BS. There's no such thing. Unluckily for him, there is. It's similar to the 360-degree Tesla cam. Unfortunately, you can't pull it up for situational awareness while moving over 20 kilometers per hour. Thanks whatever safety bean counter thought that needed to be locked out. I pull up the footage from the fleet management software, then proceed to see the gold car in question, not just travel in the blind spot, they were fully behind the vehicle, then sped up to try and cut it off when the driver turned on the signal to change lanes. "Sir, I can clearly see that your wife in the driver's seat sped up after the driver signaled intent to change lanes, entering the vehicle's blind spot. Then, instead of slowing down when the vehicle started to change lanes, you kept trying to push up until you were forced onto the shoulder." "No, that's not what—" "Don't interrupt. I can then clearly see you zip into the left lane, overtake the van, merge in front without signaling at an unsafe distance, then slam on your brakes. After reviewing this footage, I think it's a great idea to get the police involved." The woman then splutters and tries to come up with something to say, and the man then just says, "Hang up the phone, Karen." They disconnected the call, and I had a good laugh. Then I made an online police report. I'll bet their insurance premiums will never be the same again. In my opinion, right, it's just so stupid that these people didn't realize or didn't even think for 1 second that there's a pretty decent chance that this delivery van would have some form of camera, whether it's a dash cam, whether it's something that's more advanced. Like, it just feels like every sort of company van or car these days is likely to have some form of camera just to sort of protect itself in a situation like this. The fact that they're trying to just sort of con this company into getting free stuff is just very, very weird. I mean, even the fact that there could easily have just been a camera just on the road. I don't know where this took place, but I don't know. In England, for example, you're very likely to be on at least a camera, a traffic camera, if you're in like a popular place or like a, you know, not even a popular place, just like a city, for example. So who knows where this took place and whether that's different in the country that this took place in. If it's America, yeah, fair enough, it probably is different. But still, like, you just outright lying to try and get something for free. It's so dumb. And also, what they did was incredibly dangerous driving, and yeah, I'm sure that they will be charged for this. My small town is fighting over Chinese food. This is entitled people on the large scale, and it's too hilarious not to share. I live in a small town with a population of 7,000 roughly, and everyone is currently divided over a Chinese restaurant. It's been in the local news and Australia's national news. That's how crazy people are getting. Okay, after this, I'm definitely going to look that up. That's unreal. Back in May of this year, a local Chinese restaurant owner informed the local club he was renting kitchen space from that he wanted to retire, and he gave them his resignation, stating his last operating day would be the end of June. Cue the local Karens and Kevins en masse. One local, who we will call Big Kevin, teamed up with another local we will call Mega Karen, and they decided they were going to protest against the closing and force the club to keep the restaurant open. This poor man has been running the restaurant for 30 years without break and just wanted to retire peacefully. But no, Mega Karen started a petition while Big Kevin organized a protest. A protest about the closing down of a Chinese restaurant. Oh my god, that's unbelievable. Now, our third major player in this we shall call the Wicked Witch. The Wicked Witch, working in the shadows, starts leaking to the local paper that said restaurant owner is being forced out by the club, a false allegation. The club gives their first and only statement about the situation, stating that the restaurant owner retired and even produced his retirement paperwork for proof. At this point, the national news comes into it and does an interview with the restaurant owner, who states on the news that he just wants to retire. You would think that would be the end of it, but no. Mega Karen gets 1,200 or so signatures on her petition, which she hands to the club. 1,200 people have signed saying they do not want to let this man retire and that he must continue making Chinese food. Okay, the club's lawyer though calls it invalid due to over 900 of the signatures not being filled in properly. Right, okay, that's signature, printed name, and club membership number or phone number that's needed by each person to make it valid. Or the same person signed multiple petition slots. So, Mega Karen starts a new petition, which only gets 74 signatures. It makes sense now. Meanwhile, Big Kevin organizes a protest, but he doesn't show up for it, and nor does anyone else. The club then hosts a meeting for all club members of the general public, and the club's board to discuss what is going on. But again, for all the complaints, no one actually shows up. Now Mega Karen and Big Kevin are demanding that a new meeting be held, the club's general manager be fired, and the club's board be disbanded and a new board elected. The Wicked Witch then once again goes to the newspaper with a statement from the restaurant owner. The restaurant has now been closed for over a month, and states that now that the club has renovated the restaurant and has plans to start a new one, they, the old restaurant, would consider renting the space again. Before you question why the space wasn't renovated before this point, it was part of the Chinese restaurant's agreement that they would maintain and renovate the space as they saw fit, as stated by the club in their public statement. And she tells the paper that the whole reason the Chinese restaurant left wasn't because they wanted to retire, but because their rent increased from the $285 a week they've paid for 28 years to $385 a week last year, and then $485 a week this year for a restaurant space, when other local restaurants are paying $2,500 a week plus for the same or smaller places. So Big Kevin, Mega Karen, and a ton of other locals were all shocked at the cost of rent, which they are all now saying should have been kept at the $285 to encourage the restaurant to stay, even though it meant likely closing the club since they were struggling to afford running costs. The club even broke down their running costs to show the members and locals how expensive it is to keep the place open, but still not good enough. I can't with this town anymore. There we go. Now, I've done a little bit of digging there, and unfortunately, I can't find any sort of news article about this. But I do believe OP. So if you guys want to do some extensive digging of your own to potentially find out whether or not, this has had some articles written about it. I mean, if it's made national news, you'd imagine it has done, right? Then feel free and drop a comment down below letting me know if you found something and link to an article. But yeah, I can't find anything in myself. But one thing that is really funny, and just having a look through the comments, is that OP has said in the comments down below that what makes this all the more ridiculous is that there is another Chinese restaurant that is pretty popular, literally just around the corner. But no, there has to be a petition made about this one in particular. It's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen this level of fuss about a restaurant closing down. Now, don't get me wrong. When your favorite restaurant closes down, it's gutting. It is. It really is. I've been there. But to stop or try and force a petition to stop somebody from retiring is insane. I feel like this is a pretty apt story given what's gone on in the last week or so with the death of one of the most famous men and most iconic individuals potentially on the internet ever. That is succulent Chinese mailman himself. He probably would have protested, whereas no one else in this story did. He would have been the man to do it. Rest in peace. Okay, now for our second Entitled People story. Entitled People humbled at passport control. I think this is the first time in a long time that I saw a group of people act entitled. They were yelled at by other people in line, and they actually listened. I was waiting in the passport line in Iceland, where a lot of flights land very early in the morning, and I had a short layover, I think around an hour, before connecting to a new flight. Me and so many others got off our flight that landed at 6:30 a.m. We waited in passport control and we had to make a connecting flight taking off at 7:20. The non-EU side of the passport line had nearly 200 people waiting in it, and it was going about as fast as it could. So slow, and that's just the reality of it. At 6:30 a.m, most people took their tiredness and knew the best bet was to just wait in line and hope the flight waits for most of its passengers. Or just quietly accept that that connection isn't going to happen. Except for one family. Back of the line, one man goes nearly to the front and pesters this half-awake 20-year-old kid about cutting in front of him because his flight is leaving soon. You don't say, everyone's is. The kid says, sure, I don't blame him, it's too early to argue. The line cutter waves to the back and shouts, he said we can go in front of him. And 6 other entitled folks, his family, I presume, they were all dressed in matching tropical vacation clothes, come striding their way up to the spot in the front. Few uproar from the whole line. What do you think you're doing? Go to the back. Go back to where you were. You aren't special. The line cutter tried to reason his way and say, but we have a connection that leaves at 7:30. And the resounding, we all do too, from the rest of the line was poetic. It was gratifying in real time to see the man look around and see 200 people in the exact same situation as him and that he was not special. He finally, sheepishly waved his family back to go back to his old spot at the back of the line. I finally made it through passport control and made it to my flight at around 7:10. And my EU partner was able to get to the gate quicker, EU speedy line perks, and begged them to hold the gate and wait for me there, and I was one of the last ones on the flight. I was in the front third of the passport line while the line cutters were way behind me, so I don't know if they made their flight or not, but at least it was some morning entertainment. Now, interestingly, the same sort of thing as what's happened in this story happened to me not too long ago. I was flying out of an airport and it was very busy. It was so early in the morning. I was with my mates. We were knackered going to, where were we going? We were going to Nice, actually, in France. A lovely place. And what happened was I kind of just let them through, because I didn't really care. And also we were early for our flight compared to other people that were scrambling to get through. This was like through security and stuff. It wasn't even passport control, weren't even there yet. Now, was it annoying? Yeah, it was. But would I actually genuinely have said like, no, stop? Like, you know, I'm going to go through as well. We're all in the same predicament. I actually think I would if I was in the same predicament, because it is extremely annoying. So like if I had a flight that I also had to make, now I wasn't in a rush because I'm sensible with my time, especially when it comes to flying, I probably would have done the same thing. But yeah, I mean, I just didn't really care enough to get into any sort of confrontation. So I was just like, yeah, go on, go through. Don't really mind. But yeah, in this situation where everybody is queuing up for the same exact thing, everyone knows they're late, everyone's got connecting flights to go through, don't do this. Although I will say, it's actually one of the first times that I can remember in which an entitled person, or at least an entitled group, has said, actually, yeah, you know what, we're wrong. Or maybe they don't think they're wrong, but they've backed down, is what I'm trying to say. How often do you see that? Remember the story the other day where the guy sat down at a table in a restaurant outside with his girlfriend or wife, and she was just shocked because there was a queue for tables and seats. But he was like, no, I'm sitting here. I'm doing this. Everyone said to him, you're wrong, but he didn't care. That is kind of what I'd expect to happen here. But no, didn't happen. I guess kind of respect. But also, like, how are you so oblivious that you didn't realize that everyone was getting on the same flight? It's probably pretty obvious. Or that everyone was in a rush or had connecting flights. I don't know. It's not really a positive thing ultimately. But yeah, let's carry on. Now moving on to our third story. Angry boomer demands I bend over backwards to accommodate his hatred of technology. I work retail, and this guy bought something online and had it delivered. After receiving it, he decided he didn't want it anymore, so he asked to return it for a refund. I said, sure, no problem, just send it back with the returns form found on our website and ship it back to us. He then got super angry that he had to print off a form. Like most people my age, I don't have a freaking printer. So I said, okay, fine, don't print out the form, just include a handwritten note and ship it back to us. And how am I supposed to do that? By taking it to the post office? And what? You're expecting me to pay for shipping? Well, it's your choice to send it back. So, back in my day, stores provided a little something called customer service. I expect to receive that from you as well. Annoyed at the entitlement, but also just exhausted of the BS, I agreed to provide a return label. I asked him to move the conversation to email though, since I can't provide him a return label over the phone. So he sent his email, rehashed all his nonsense from the phone call, and I replied with this. I can provide you a return label, but you need to be able to print it off so you can attach it to the item. That was 2 months ago, and he never replied to that email. Today, he called me back. Hi, it's Bob. Remember me? Sorry, Bob, but I speak to many people every day. You'll need to refresh my memory. And with that, he was fuming again. It was like me not remembering him was the worst sort of insult. He rehashed everything again, and then it all came flooding back. My immediate thought was, didn't this happen months ago? And I was right, it did. I checked the email chain and I sent my email on June the 16th. He again complained about having to ship it back himself and having to have access to a printer, but I just said, because I was annoyed, that's the way the world works now. I can't change that. So he said, I'm sick of this. I've had enough of this for today. I'll call back later. Then he hung up. I was hoping that would be the last of him for another 2 months, but no, he replied to my email from 2 months ago within an hour. He again started complaining about how we have made this difficult for him and that we should make accommodations for people that don't have a printer. I replied saying, we can provide you with a PDF of the label, and if you don't have a printer, then you could ask a friend or a relative or even the post office to print it for you. Now, here is the kicker, the absolute cherry on top of his entitlement. This is your problem to fix, not mine. Your store has set up a system that requires the use of a printer without any consideration for people that are too old to use modern technology. I will not go out of my way to fix a problem that you created. You need to tell the courier to print the label themselves and have them deliver the label to my house. Wow, I haven't replied yet, but there are so many things I would like to say. Firstly, this is our system? Welcome to the 21st freaking century, you decrepit C-word. It's sentences like that, by the way, guys, that make me really want to change the fact that I don't swear on this channel. Just such a beautiful sentence. But yeah, can't read it. Obviously, got to censor it, but wow, so good. Anyway, we didn't invent the need for a printer. Couriers are the ones that generate the PDFs, not us, but that is the easiest way to do it. Your refusal to understand that does not make you right. Secondly, this is definitely a you problem. I understand not owning your own printer because I don't own one either, but you could easily take the PDF to a friend or a family member that does have one. Even if you don't have friends, shocking, or a family, you could take the item to the post office and ask them to print the label and stick it on the frickin' parcel, but no, you have such a vendetta against technology that you refuse to partake in it. It's almost as if you think finding a printer somehow enables this behavior, and your refusal to use a printer is an act of defiance meant to break us from our reliance on technology so we can go back to a simpler time. Well, buddy, I've had enough. Either pay to ship it back yourself or forget about your refund. You don't want to enable our reliance on technology, that's fine, but I don't want to enable your entitlement. So if this is our stalemate, so be it. We don't lose anything. You're the one that wants to return it, all because you changed your mind. So the next move is yours. Wow, that last paragraph was phenomenal. And I think it sounds like the start of a genuine superhero movie, or just like a hero versus villain movie. And I want to see it, guys. I don't know about you, but I want to see it. See, this right here is why I will try my hardest in my life to never have to work in a sort of job where, and I'm not like trashing on these sort of jobs, by the way. People that do it are extremely good at it a lot of the time. But yeah, customer service, I just do not think I have the sort of temperament to do well in this at all. I think I just get like so angry or annoyed at just idiots like this. To be fair to OP, like, you've shown pretty great patience there. And I know eventually you've got annoyed and said the right thing, in my opinion, like actually been hard and said, nah, come on, you're taking the mick here. But I just couldn't deal with this sort of stuff. If you guys work in customer service, let me know down below. How often does this sort of stuff happen to you where you're just like, I cannot believe how ridiculous the person that I'm speaking to on the other end of the line is. And like, what are they doing? How dumb are they? Because this is just ridiculous. Yes, this man clearly does just have a vendetta against technology, but he's taking it out on you. You don't deserve that, but you dealt with it well. Now for our final Entitled People story of this episode. Karen angry that I snapped at her kid after said kid screamed into my ear. So this happened a few years ago at a major airport in the US. I worked as a pilot for an airline, and in the course of my duties, I ride our aircraft to and from home to our crew base. I often did this out of uniform, with my only identifying feature being my work ID or lanyard. My last flight before time off put us on the ground around noon. Being off duty, I immediately changed out of my uniform and took a seat from the gate where my flight home would depart from. Behind me, there was a rambunctious child whom was using the seats as her personal playground and randomly squealing and screaming while doing so. While this is annoying and the squeals are like nails on a chalkboard to me, it is the reality of things. I just ignore it and I browse through my tablet. The next thing I know, I catch a full scream into my ear. I turn my head and the kid is literally a couple of centimeters from my face and is hanging off the back of my chair. I immediately snapped at the kid. Do not scream into my ear. That is when the Karen mother, who was just letting this happen, loses her head. She darts up, standing over the seat behind me, yelling at me, "Don't you yell at my kid! How dare you!" The kid, meanwhile, has a shocked look, but settles down or goes silent. Karen, though, continues on, trying to goad me into arguing with her and doing everything but actually putting hands on me to escalate this into a physical fight. She even tries to encourage her kid to scream again, to which the kid just sat there quietly. I initially stare at her for a few seconds, then I went back to ignoring her and the situation and just go back to looking at my tablet. She continues having a meltdown for 10 minutes before the man with her collected her, the kid, their things, and went elsewhere. I feel bad for the kid, as I cannot see her future ending well with that sort of guidance. It was also a shame that the mother flipped, as I likely would have given the kid wings that my company supplies us with after the kid calmed down. Well, hopefully after this lady has learned that if she doesn't discipline her kid for doing stuff that is just downright rude and obnoxious and just wrong, then somebody else eventually will. Doesn't necessarily mean that it had to be you in this situation, but I'm sure this has happened a lot of the time in the past, and it needs someone like you to eventually make her realize what is she doing as a parent? How can you be enabling this sort of stuff? Again, as I always say, with children that are extremely young, or even just young, I don't blame them. You can't really blame a kid for going mental, but you can blame a parent for not parenting. Simple as that. And yeah, you know what? Fair play for shouting at the kid. Probably just shocked her. Something that her mum has clearly never done. She's probably never heard the words "stop doing that" in her life. Crazy, but yeah, good job. My sister climbs through the second-story window and assaults me. I've watched her channel read out a lot of stories like this, but I never thought that I'd ever witness one or even be involved with one. But alas, my sister changed that. Who knows? Might be this channel. For some context, I am a 17-year-old man, my sister is a 20-year-old female. She is 21 weeks pregnant and smokes cigarettes, weed, and vapes while being so, and I refer to her as entitled sister. We verbally argue a lot, but it's never gotten physical. She insults my weight and calls me homophobic slurs. During this event, I had a friend staying over who only heard what happened from my room. So this morning I woke up to my mum calling, telling me to lock the front and back door and to not let my sister in. So I assumed that they had an argument. After the call ended, I did this and I returned to my room. A couple of minutes later, my entitled sister is in the back garden telling me to let her in for something whilst banging on the door constantly. After ignoring her, it went quiet for about 2 minutes when I get a phone call from my mum telling me that my sister is climbing the front of the house to get into an open window. For reference, the front of our house has a wall in front of it, and the front door, shower room, and hallway stick out, so she climbed from the wall to the part that sticks out into the window. I meet her at the window, and I can't exactly push her, so I let her in and try and close the bedroom door. By this time, my mum said she was calling the police before I put the phone down, so I was gonna try and keep her in the room while that happened. At this point, since I was unable to close the bedroom door, I put my back to her and blocked the doorway, because my sister said that she was going to smash up the house. She was trying to get past me and slowly pushed me down the hall. Once we got close to the stairs, I tried to restrain her because I didn't want anything happening to either of us because she is still my pregnant sister. But I didn't restrain her properly, I guess, so she dug her nails into my neck, forearm, and then she bit the same arm. I have pictures, I just can't post them on this subreddit. Oh my. After this, I punched her in the back and let go. I didn't want to, it just kind of happened. While this happened, she was screaming police and that she couldn't breathe. Bear in mind, I never obstructed her breathing. After this, she walked down the stairs and got a bat from next to the front door and threatened me with it, though I doubt she would have actually hit me. Like a minute later, she climbed out of the living room window and waited for the police with her friend. When the police came, I gave my account of what happened. I was going to press charges in the moment, but my mum convinced me not to. But she is not to come near us or the house again. If she ever assaults me again, I will press charges. What a start to this episode. Okay, crazy start to this one. I've got no idea what's going on, what the family dynamic is at all, but the image of your entitled sister climbing up your house to get into an open window is just insane. The biting and the physical abuse and stuff, yeah, less funny. But the first bit of that was just so amusing. The fact it's your sister and she's pregnant as well, just the risk of doing that is so stupid. But then again, you said that she smokes cigarettes, weed, and vapes while pregnant. So yeah, I probably should have guessed that she'd do something as stupid as this. What a woman. I'd love to meet her. Let's move on. Now for our second Entitled People story of this episode. But it's just a few dollars. I just witnessed, quite possibly, the most entitled interaction of my life. I, a 40-year-old woman, was at my local convenience store, talking to the owner's daughter. She needed help with homework and was asking everyone if they could help her understand it. Shakespeare isn't for everyone, but it's something I thoroughly enjoyed at school. I'm in there almost daily, so they know me. In walks this woman, probably around my age, and she begins gathering items and dumping them on the counter, completely disregarding other customers who were already at it. This goes on for a few minutes, and then she goes to pay. At this point, the clerk is serving someone else, and this woman interrupts the transaction and states, "My items are on the counter, so you shouldn't be serving anyone else, as I'm clearly waiting to be served." I always believed that, in order to be served in a store, you had to physically be in a line or at the counter. Maybe I'm wrong. The man being served smiles at this woman and says something along the lines of he's buying smokes and needs 30 seconds to complete his transaction, and she can just wait. This led to much huffing and puffing from the woman. She then turns to me and says, "Can you believe the audacity of some people?" I can't help but giggle before I reply with, "No, but I really do appreciate the irony." She didn't get the joke. By now, the guy has left and the clerk is ringing up her items and putting them into bags. He finishes and tells her the total, which was $30-something. She tells him he will take $25 because that's all she has. He tells her he will willingly take the $25, providing she removes sufficient items to ensure it covers her bill. Introduce tantrum, stage right. "I need everything. You can't deprive me of my needs. Who do you think you are? I'm calling my husband." The clerk doesn't miss a beat and replies with, "Well, make sure he brings his wallet." Now, the kid and I have completely forgotten about Shakespeare and are enjoying the theatre production unfolding in front of us. Out comes her phone, and she's scrolling furiously while repeating, "Just wait until he gets here." Again, the clerk doesn't miss a beat and says, "I have no other choice but to wait. My shift doesn't end for another 3 hours." She literally stamps her feet while shouting, "But it's only $10. I'm also at the point of having to put my fist in my mouth to stifle my laugh. This woman calls her husband and puts the phone on speaker. He answers, and she puts on this really pitiful, whiny voice. "Baby, I'm at this store and the clerk is holding me and 2 other females hostage. You need to come and rescue us." This guy must be all too familiar with his wife's antics and says, "You can't really be held hostage and be allowed to use your phone. So either you didn't have enough money or you're trying to buy alcohol without ID." I didn't stifle the laughter, and now this woman has 3 people openly laughing at her. She has to sheepishly admit it was the former. Her husband then says, "If you leave the chips, candy, and soda behind that you don't need and that we have more than enough of in the house,
I'm sure you'll have enough money. She started to protest, and her husband uttered, I've told you about doing this. Say one more word and I'm cancelling your birthday. She stamped her foot again as she hung up and told the clerk to remove the suggested items so that she does have enough to cover the bill. As she's about to leave, she actually asks that no one posts about this on Reddit. Wow, that is just a wonderful story. You know what? I think that might be the first time. Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, if you've been around in the channel for a long time and you can remember a time where this has happened. But I don't think we've ever seen anyone before in any of these stories ask that nobody posts about it on Reddit. That is so good. I know that Reddit has obviously blown up and subreddits like this are much more popular now than they were a few years back. But still, for someone to say, okay, maybe just nobody posts about this on the internet and let me be, is so funny. She clearly knows from what her husband has told her that what she's done is terrible. What I don't get is, from his perspective, why is he still with her? Maybe he kind of likes the fact that she is just so dumb and he has to keep her in line, but it's a bit weird as to why, you'd be with a woman like this. Nonetheless, makes for funny stories, I guess. Now for our next story. We aren't a dang daycare. So, quick background. I work at a private kindergarten that is a school, not a daycare. We teach math, reading, manners, writing, etc. Obviously, it's very simplified. We have a schedule that is posted weekly of our classes, and children have to test to get in. Due to where we are located, one of the richest neighborhoods in a very large city, most of our children come from wealthy families. Up until now, this has not caused any more issues than children bragging about their social level and then being humbled by not even knowing what money is, as is to be expected. However, I have a family that is incredibly entitled in my class. When their child arrives, she has to strut around a bit and make everyone stop and say hi to her, which is fine since she's 5 and what else should we expect? But the issue is that she shows up 5 minutes before lunch almost every day, interrupting my class when my students all get up to go and hug her. Our first issue with these parents bringing her late is that her parents refuse to let us know when they're doing it and why they are doing it. They won't answer the phone if we call, and they'll lie to us if we ask if they're coming today. For example, my partner teacher called and got through to the mother and asked if the child would be coming the next day, as we had an activity to plan. And the mother explained they had an issue with some documents that day, and that's why they couldn't come, but they'd certainly be there for the activity. Well, guess who didn't show up and who didn't call? On top of this, the child is straight up failing every subject. Halfway through the school year, they don't know the alphabet, they can't do basic math, they can barely count to 10. Meanwhile, the rest of the class has excelled in all areas, and there are 5-year-olds that are already reading and doing basic addition. But this child's mother complains that the homework is too hard for the child, as if they ever actually do it. We have to deal with this almost every day. Alright, halfway through this, guys, I've got to interject and just say, why haven't you kicked out this child yet? It's not the fault of the child, but just if a family is this difficult, and you said it's an incredibly competitive school, right? But if a family is this difficult and it's disrupting everyone else, just get them out of there. Anyway, let's carry on. OP says, I say almost every day because lately she has started showing up at 3:15 and school ends at 3:20. Her parents bring her just for her after-school programs, which she greatly enjoys, but I'm fed up with it. The school is actually struggling to keep children due to some staffing mess-ups, way too complicated to get into, so they can't tell the parents to pound sand when they show up at the end of the day, and no one is willing to tell them off at all. Okay, makes sense a little bit, I suppose. Due to this, the child hasn't attended a single class in almost a week, showing up just as the other children leave to attend the fun programs. What really gets me is that they clearly don't need a school right now. They're clearly home with her until 3 p.m. and only drop her off for 2 hours. They don't want her actually learning, which has put her far behind her peers in this area. And the way this child acts in the country we live in Asia, wherever they go from here, elementary, international school, another kindergarten, whatever, she is in for the rudest awakening of their life. If they return to their home country, I know for a fact she'll be beaten for the way she acts on the rare occasion that she is in class. These parents are so entitled that they don't realize they're setting their child up for failure. They treat us like garbage, like a daycare, instead of the school we are, and I'm just sick of it. If it were up to me, I'd start fining them for coming later than lunch. If that doesn't work, I'd kindly tell them to take the kid to an actual daycare, because they are wasting our dang time. Okay, you know what? I actually retract what I previously said in terms of it being understandable that these guys haven't been chucked out yet. I do not care what is going on with your company, with your private kindergarten. Just get them gone. Like, I don't even mind if it's going to cost you a lot of money. You've got to do it. It's impacting everyone to such an extent that I'm sure that, yeah, losing a little bit of money isn't great, but I'm sure you can deal with that and just have a much easier working career and life without them there. And, you know, the other families will probably see the benefit as well of that long term. It's definitely in the interest of this kindergarten to just get rid of this family once and for all. They can find something else. I agree with OP. I mean, yeah, an actual daycare. That's what they're looking for. Why don't they just go to that instead? I would also kind of think like that. I don't blame OP for this at all, or the kindergarten, but you shouldn't be allowing a 5-year-old kid to come into a class like that late, waltz around and like say hello to everyone and get hugs and high fives from everyone. If anything, they should be told to sit down and not be late again. And then, you know, at least they would get that message sort of drummed into them that they can't just waltz in at any moment and just act like a queen. If anything, that's enabling their entitled behavior. And I know it's not your fault, OP, that this child is like this. It's obviously her parents, but you have to start helping out, right? That is one of the main points of school and education. It's not just for you know, getting clever, but it's also, of course, for teaching an individual how to behave, right? You said yourself that you actually teach manners. Where are the manners here? Again, not putting the blame solely or even massively on OP, but yeah, I didn't really understand that bit. But nonetheless, these people have to go. Now for our final story of this episode. The smartest guy in the whole wide restaurant. So, a while ago, me, my girlfriend and her friends went to a fondue place for her birthday. It was a really popular spot, so when we got there were already 15 or 20 people waiting outside the restaurant. We put our names on the list and were hanging out, chatting and waiting for our table. There were 2 outdoor tables with people eating while we waited, and one group finished up and left, leaving the table empty. Enter smart guy and his girlfriend. This guy walks up to a restaurant and sees 20-ish people standing outside around an empty table with used plates and silverware still on it, and just sits down at the table with a very smug look on his face, like he's figured out a life hack that all the other people in line were too stupid to think of. Everyone outside is giving this guy the stink eye now. His girlfriend, who unlike him does have the ability to feel shame, starts trying to tell him they need to put their name on the list, and he can't just claim a table at a busy restaurant just because nobody else is currently sitting there. The guy, who is fully being glared at by at least 6 other people a few feet away from him, doubles down and explains to her that that's not how it works. He was the first to claim the table, and he doesn't want to move and give someone else the opportunity to take it. She tries in vain to argue, but smart guy just gets on his phone and continues tuning the rest of the world out. Then, like 30 seconds later, a waitress comes out to clean the table, and when she sees him, she's like, "Yeah, you can't sit there. There's a huge waiting list. Do you seriously not see all these people around you?" And some people outside start laughing at him or making comments. His girlfriend is freaking mortified, and as soon as the guy sheepishly gets up, she insists they leave as she's too embarrassed to eat with him in public. It's just wild to me the way that some people will double down on behavior that they know is wrong just because they think admitting their wrongness makes them look stupid. It's just being stubborn, that's all it is. This guy, I'm sure, just thinks that he is, you know, the dog's balls, for want of a better phrase, and has probably been able to do this in the past and has gotten away with it, but thankfully now is being called out on it. Everyone has met or knows somebody like this, don't they? They're just terrible. They just think that they are above everyone else in society, and I don't know why, because they're not. If anything, they're below other people, just because they're so stupid and arrogant. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't know why people do this sort of thing. Like, as you've said, OP, how does this person just not have any shame or guilt for what they're doing? If I did this and I saw 6 people glaring at me, I'd probably think, even if I didn't know it was wrong, even though it so clearly is, I'd probably think, I wonder if I'm doing something wrong here. And also, I cannot face the fact that 6 people are glaring at me and then just get on with my meal. I don't know how people do it. They've just got no awareness at all. But yeah, this guy is just clearly a bad bloke, and his girlfriend should not just not eat with him in public, but how about just not eating with him ever at all and sacking him off? That's what I'd recommend. Our neighbours have been having pool parties at our pool while we are not home for years. A few years ago, my husband and I purchased a house with a pool. Now, we are acquainted with most of our neighbours, but definitely not close friends with any of them. They all seem nice, but well, we just don't have much in common other than where we live. Next door to the right is a family of 6. Twin daughters attending the local university, high school age son and a young elementary school age daughter, maybe 1st or 2nd grade, and then the parents. Now, normally we open the pool in early May and we keep it open until the end of October. But this year our weather was off and we had a very cool and very wet month of May, and then June went straight to 100+ temperatures. Now, I'm currently on medication that makes it difficult for me to tolerate being in the sun and heat for an extended time. Plus, we have been helping 2 extended family members who are having health issues. So because of this, we haven't had our pool opened yet this year. Normally, we go to the family lake house for a week during each of the 3 major holidays. But we didn't go for Memorial Day because there was flooding around the lake this year. And because a family member was just discharged from the hospital yesterday, and July 4th being a Thursday this year, we decided to stay home this week and be available to help this family member. Now, several times in June, the little girl next door has seen either my husband or myself outside, and she's asked when we are opening the pool. We first told her maybe later, but the last time, yesterday, that she asked, and I said we're probably just not going to open it this year, she started crying. Now, we've never had any of our neighbours over to use our pool, so I didn't understand why she was crying over us not opening our pool. Well, I spoke with the neighbour on the left later, and apparently our neighbours on the right have been having a small family party at our pool every 4th of July when we're gone. They've always cleaned up really well afterwards, and because we have scheduled pool maintenance and weekly yard service, occasionally things are moved around in our yard and we never thought much about it. The neighbour on the left thought we'd given the other neighbours permission to use our pool. We did give them permission to retrieve any balls or toys that ended up in our yard, but never permission to use our pool, especially when we're not at home. We have a special latch on the gate, and my husband did show the neighbour how to open the gate to retrieve his kids' toys. So, now my husband, who loves gadgets, is going to have several more cameras installed around the exterior of our house, covering the gate and pool area, and have the gate latch made where we can grant remote access for the pool service and yardmen. Luckily, we have a friend who does cameras and home automation systems. I'm annoyed our neighbours have been using our pool without permission, but my husband is happy I am letting him get more gadgets around the house. Now, do we confront the neighbours and let them know we know they've been using our pool, or do we just wait and see if they say anything about our new security cameras? Okay, so that is it for the original post, but as I mentioned in the introduction to this one, there is an update that was posted just 2 days later. Let's get straight into it. I didn't expect this to blow up like it has. I certainly didn't expect over 1,000 comments. Actually, yeah, looking at the original post, it has over 18,000 upvotes and yeah, over 1,000 comments. I've tried to read them all, and some were very creative and amusing to read. First of all, we don't want to hurt anyone or alienate our neighbours. We just don't want people using our pool without permission, and we don't want the liability associated with this activity. Here's an example of a comment that I think that OP was referencing. Somebody said on the original post, "I'm so petty that I'd open the pool, hide the cars so they'd think I was gone, then lurk hidden near the pool ready to step in and ask what the heck they think they're doing when they stroll in for their party. I'd embarrass them in front of their guests so hard." But then again, you have to live next door to these people, so probably best not to do that. But that would be so good in that moment, oh my goodness. Anyway, let's get back to the update. A few things I feel I need to clarify. Yes, our backyard is fully fenced in with 2 gates. The one in the back is double locked from the inside. The side gate on the side of the garage nearest the neighbours in question has a double latch that you have to reach over the top and find not 1, but 2 releases to open the gate. There's also an auto close that automatically closes the gate and latches it. I personally can't open the gate from the outside of the fence because I can't reach over that far to reach the 2 latches. The previous owner put this in and it's worked well for our yard crew and the pool maintenance people. We do have some cameras, a doorbell camera and a camera over our garage area. The garage camera picks up if someone goes towards the gate from the front, but we didn't want to invade our neighbour's privacy by recording their side garage door and gate to their backyard. We even shared the camera angle with them because we didn't want them to be concerned about us recording their children or their coming and going. I guess we were more concerned about their privacy
than they were about ours. Anyway, the update. Thursday, July 4th morning. I was loading a few things in my vehicle to take my cousin who just got out of the hospital. Neighbour/husband, who's been gone a lot for work recently, saw me and came over and asked if I was getting a late start going to the lake. I let him know that we were staying home because we're helping my cousin who just got out of hospital. He asked if we were going to be staying at home all weekend. I said yes, one or both of us will be around all weekend. He quickly wished me a happy 4th and went home. I went back in to grab my purse and tell my husband about the conversation with the neighbour before I left. When I got home, our friend Mike was there. Mike does security cameras and home automation systems, gadgets, and my husband loves gadgets. Mike and my husband have a plan for multiple cameras and several gadgets, some of which involve us going ahead and having the pool opened. I agreed to all but one of the new cameras and almost all of the gadgets. I think my husband put some in the plan, knowing he'd have to give up on a few of them. Mike also suggested talking to our homeowner's insurance agent because we might be able to get some discounts with the security upgrades. So on Friday the 5th, Tom, our insurance guy, comes over and Mike is back and he has a drone to help him find the best camera positions. Really, I think he just wanted to show off his gadget. So my husband, Mike and Tom are outside and all around the house and occasionally inside. I look outside every so often, and at different times, other neighbours have come outside and down to our end of the street. The neighbours want to know what's going on, so my husband tells them we're concerned that someone, or several people, may have used our pool without our permission while we were not home. It turns out that 2 different neighbours had witnessed some friends of the neighbours' children come over last year, and they and the neighbour twins had gone into our backyard. One neighbour even asked the girls, and they claimed that we let them come over all the time and use our pool. So at this point, my husband and Tom discussed this, and Tom says we should send a registered letter to the neighbours rescinding our permission from entering our fenced-in backyard. So before Mike and Tom left, the neighbours on the right, pool party neighbours, come home, both husband and wife. My husband asked to talk to them, and with Mike and Tom as witnesses, he tells them that for insurance reasons, we are rescinding our permission for them or any member of their family or guests to enter our fenced-in backyard, and we will be sending a registered letter stating this as requested by our insurance. My husband never accused them or their children of using our pool, but said we had reason to believe that in the past, our pool had been used without our permission. He did say that we had reason to believe that their older children might be friends with someone who's been in our pool. My husband also told them that we are changing the gate to have an automated lock and cameras will be installed around the pool area. He also assured them that we'd avoid the cameras being pointed at their windows or backyard. My husband indicated that we were taking these measures to hopefully lower our homeowners' insurance rates. He said that they exchanged a few looks between them, but they said they understood and appreciated the heads up. So, hopefully this saga is over, but if there are any other updates, I will try and post them. Okay, so there we go. That is the end of the story for now. And I'm going to be honest, a little bit disappointed that we didn't get a really amazing ending to this one. Something along the lines of a comment I read below the original post, but maybe that was a little bit too far-fetched and fanciful. But I was dreaming of something as poetic as that. Imagine the look on their faces when you just come out of nowhere. Surprise, we're not at the lake. And you are on our property. Here are the police. Would have been amazing. But in a much more real sense, I understand exactly why you did what you did, and it's a much more succinct and sensible solution to this problem that, is going to have the best long-term effects. I think, though, just finally, I do need to just talk about the absolute entitlement to go and use your neighbour's pool and have a party there without them knowing. Imagine doing that. Is genuinely insane, and you can't for 1 second say or have the excuse that because when my kid knocks the ball into their garden we're allowed to go and get it, I'm then allowed to use the pool whenever I want. That's not how it works. It's absolutely insane. It is illegal, it is trespassing, and I'm glad that they've finally been stopped because it's just unbelievable what they were doing. Okay, now for our next story. Plane seat bandit finally happened to me. Now, I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm actually going to get on a flight in under 3 hours from the time of recording. So this is going to scare me, but I'm going to do it just for you. People stealing plane seats and getting told off for it are some of my favourite stories on Reddit. With the increase of plane seat bandits, most likely due to airlines almost making it a requirement to pay for seats if you want to sit next to your plane partner, I've been half expecting to run into one since me and my husband travel a lot for work. Well, it finally happened, and it was fun. Me and my husband always buy plane seats towards the back of the plane. As we stroll down, we see a lady with a young son, maybe 11 or 12, sitting in our seats. They were both deep in their phones when I told her that she was in our seats. We had to wake up at 3 a.m. to drive to the airport, and we didn't really sleep, so I was not in the mood for BS. She smiles and tells us that they weren't seated together, so the stewardess told her they could sit here. She most definitely didn't. I smile back and say we paid for these seats, so we'd like to sit there. She keeps smiling her stiff smile and points to other empty seats behind us and asks if we wouldn't mind sitting in one of them, since they're already settled and comfortable. Would it even matter? Well, I said, yes, since the plane is still boarding, so these might all be reserved, and it really messes with the system if people sit in random seats. Goodness me, the flight's not even full yet. Just get up and move, man. It's insane. Anyway, she is starting to lose her smile and says if there aren't seats available after the plane has finished boarding, they would move then. Now, I'm not confrontational, and I'm usually a people pleaser, so I'm struggling to stand up for myself, but I'm so proud for doing it anyways. Meanwhile, my husband is struggling between boarding passengers to get the flight attendant. I sigh and, with a half smile, say, I'm sorry, but I just want to sit down and not stand in the hallway blocking people to see if maybe there are empty seats when I paid for our seats. And besides, I would like the police to be able to identify our bodies by seat number in case the plane crashes and our families want to bury our remains. Oh my goodness. The kid's face, which has been glued to his phone this entire time, shoots up in shock and he looks between me and his mum. It was delicious. She has a bewildered look on her face. There's silence for 5 seconds before she packs up her stuff and pokes her son to move. I keep smiling sweetly and thank her and plonk myself down as my husband returns with a flight attendant. I tell her everything is fine and I tell my husband what happened. We laughed and I'm pretty sure the mum heard, or at least I hope so. I didn't look back, but I think I'm not mistaken of feeling a laser stare in the back of my head. Luckily, the flight was only 3 hours, so I didn't need to walk past for the loo. Well, that was a phenomenal story. Well, there we go. Some of my fears, I think, have been offset a little bit by reading that story. I have just got a notification literally right now from the flight saying it's going to be delayed. Don't know how. It's 3 a.m. when I'm recording this, and the flight's at 6:50. How is it already delayed? Makes no sense. You can see maybe behind me. Oh, can you? Yes, there we go. A rucksack. Doesn't give anything away. I have a bag here as well. I'm going. And you know what? Because of this story, I want to bump into some entitled people. And I'm not going to be as funny or nice or clever as OP. I'm just going to batter them in the face. Anyone got any objections? No? Okay, I'll do it then. Now, before we get into the more regular Reddit story stuff today, and don't worry, we're going to get into that. I first of all need to tell you about an article and a story that I've seen online, which has absolutely just shocked me and blown my mind. As you can tell by the title of this one, this is technically r/entitled parents. I think the story that you're about to see goes a long way beyond that, but I just had to show you guys. I had to bring it to your attention. Here it is. Now, we talk about titles of news articles. This is on Daily Express US, and the title of this article is Boy, 10, crushed to death by £340 foster mum after she sat on him for misbehaving. So yeah, as I say, this obviously goes beyond what we'd normally expect from entitled parents. This is just, yeah, murder, a little bit further than the usual stuff. But I just have to tell you about this story. It just blew me away when I saw it. So, Jennifer Wilson has been charged with involuntary manslaughter after her £340 frame caused the death of 10-year-old Dakota Levi Stevens in Berrien County, Michigan, court document says. Which is just insane. For Europeans, £340 is roughly, let me do some maths on the fly, about 150, 160 kg, roughly around there. Like, it's insane. It's double my weight, and I'm not a light person. Like, if I was lying on a 10-year-old boy, not in that way, I probably shouldn't be making jokes given what's happened here. If I was lying on a 10-year-old boy, I would be thinking, okay, this is going to be a struggle for them to breathe.
Two of me? Yeah, that's insane. Anyway, here we go. Here's a picture of the lad and his foster mum. Just such a sad story. A 10-year-old boy was crushed to death after his 340-pound foster mum sat on top of him after he acted up, according to court documents. Jennifer Wilson was apprehended in Berrien County, Michigan, and could face up to 6 years behind bars. 6 years only is just, like, that's just insane. If you're telling me that she genuinely didn't realize that she's so fat that she could kill a child, then that's not a reason for her not to get more than 6 years. Surely that's still murder. I don't know. Get your comments down below, guys, as we go through this. Anyway, court filings say that she informed the police that Dakota Levi Stevens had fled earlier in the day, and she discovered him at a neighbor's residence. According to the court papers, the foster mum claimed Dakota began to misbehave when they returned home, throwing himself on the ground outside her house. It's alleged that she sat on Dakota while contacting his caseworker, during which time the boy screamed and eventually ceased moving. She confessed to the police that she initially believed the child was pretending until she rolled him over and noticed his eyelids were unusually pale. The foster mother disclosed to investigators that she sat on Dakota for approximately 5 minutes. 5 minutes with 160 kilograms on top of you as a 10-year-old boy. It goes on to say Dakota weighed 91 pounds. So what's that? About 40 kilos, roughly? 42 maximum? It's hardly anything. 91 pounds is a quarter of her body weight. Absolutely insane. While Wilson tipped the scales at 340 pounds. Goodness me. The Department of Child Services had assigned the child to her care just 1 month prior to the incident, reports the Mirror US. And it's just so sad. Here's another picture of him. I mean, look, obviously his weight isn't really that important. I think even if I was under the weight of someone twice my weight, I'd be struggling to breathe. But he's a 10-year-old kid. It's absolutely insane. The court affidavit reveals that Wilson appeared visibly distraught when police arrived. By the time they reached the scene, Dakota had stopped breathing and had no pulse. Now, look, it's one thing being visibly distraught when you realize that you've killed your foster child, and only a psychopath wouldn't be visibly distraught or genuinely distraught. But if she genuinely thought that sitting on somebody a quarter of her weight for 5 minutes wasn't, maybe not kill them, but going to have serious ramifications to their health, then she must be the most stupid person of all time. Since when is sitting on a child ever been a good form of punishment ever? I don't know. He was airlifted to a nearby medical facility where he was taken off life support just 2 days later. The St. Joseph County Coroner's Office declared Stevens' death a homicide. Good. The affidavit also disclosed that authorities discovered a 20-second clip from Ring video cameras showing Wilson lying on the boy's neck and head area while he screamed. So it wasn't just on his body in its entirety, it was on the most important part of his body. I mean, it's just insane. Another video from the same camera showed Dakota still screaming as Wilson remained on top of him, his cries gradually fading. Dakota, Wilson can be heard yelling multiple times when she realizes the child has stopped moving. She then instructs one of her other children to dial 911. "I was laying on him and he was acting bad," Wilson is heard saying in the video. Wilson had 3 other adopted children living in her home. Department of Child Services spokesman Brian Heineman confirmed her foster parents' license is currently suspended and under review for revocation. So there we go. I mean, that is a story. And I felt like I just had to bring it to you guys. Obviously, a lot more serious than the normal stuff that I cover on my channel. But it's just an insane story that I thought I just had to bring you lot. I just do not understand how she's gotten away with only getting up to 6 years in prison. That's the one thing I just do not understand. And again, I don't think that she was trying to kill the kid. Like, I'm not saying that for 1 second. But if you have to give someone a punishment that is worthy of what they did, and she has killed a 10-year-old child. How can that be only 6 years? And it's not as if, you know, she was driving along at the speed limit and he ran out in front of the road and she happened to hit him and then he died and it wasn't her fault. This is all her fault. It's like entirely her fault. So I just think 6 years is an absolute disgrace. But yeah, there we go, guys. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.
crazy story to start things off. Now let's jump back on Reddit for a more normal story. But wow, yeah, I had to bring that one to you. Mum says she can unlock the door of her 24-year-old child's room and let herself in without permission because it's her house. I think she might be an entitled mum, or maybe I'm just a trashy kid. I'm 24 years old and a college student. I've worked in a bar for the last 2 years, and though it's a stable job, I still don't make enough to move out. I've had other higher paying jobs, but my area is just too expensive. And due to having moved to this state with my parents immediately after graduating high school and growing up a military kid, constantly moving and struggling to ever keep contact with friends that I did make because of it, I had no friends in the area that I could just move in with, and I have too much paranoia to live with strangers. I've just been living with my parents until I finished college, doing it online because my parents didn't want me having to live in a dorm and be away from them, which I should be graduating next year, and then hopefully move in with the only person I've managed to be so close with by then. We just live in separate states right now, so it's taking time. Anyways, my parents have always been very weird when it came to raising me and my older sister. There's a lot of instances, I have plenty of stories, but this one just annoys me the most and causes me anxiety. My parents' house is big, but every room except the master bedroom is pretty small. My bedroom can only fit my bed, dresser, and TV stand comfortably, so my desk and computer and bookshelf and my ferret and his big cage are in the bedroom next to mine that's used as an office for me instead. I'm 24, so obviously I love having some privacy, especially since I spent most of my life being heavily monitored and coddled by my parents, specifically my mum, because I was diagnosed with Asperger's at 4, and a bunch of other things that keep adding up as I see doctors. My sister actually told me she was a bit relieved about how little they ever paid attention to her because they were so focused on me. I was coddled so much by my mother that I'm only now learning things like cooking or doing laundry, which she still keeps me from doing because it has to be done this way, not that way. And when I ask for help, she gets mad and tells me to figure it out myself. Anyways, rambling all this to say that our mum still hovers and overwhelms me with how on top of me she is. But the worst of it is probably the fact she will let herself into my bedroom or office whenever she wants, most of the time without announcement. Reminder, I'm an adult. I'm also AFAB, and again, an adult. Though my parents don't believe I do things like that because I'm their baby who never seems interested and acts disgusted, but I act that way to keep my dad from making jokes and comments about me. So besides existing, I also do adult things in my private time. Obviously, I'll lock the door, but does that stop her? Absolutely not. So even if I'm in my office playing video games, I'll keep one end of the headphones off at all times so I can listen out for my mum moving around nearby. Goodness me, that is not going to be good for your situational awareness depending on what game you're playing. I won't have anything to hide, but my anxiety will go through the roof. Besides that, because of my dad, I hate anyone coming up or sneaking up behind me without my knowing, and she insists on my computer facing the door, so my back is to the door. So I lock my door to prevent people from doing that. Like any human being, I also lock my door when I'm changing in my bedroom. And what does my mum do? She finds my door is locked, unlocks it, and lets herself in. There was this one time, for example, where I was in my bedroom in the middle of changing. I'm literally completely topless, boobs to the wind, when I didn't hear her approach my door. All I hear suddenly is the sound of my doorknob, the lock being switched from the outside, and then the door being thrusted open. And what did I do? I body slammed the door shut and nearly hurt her doing it. I don't know what it is, but even if it's my mum, who insisted on bathing me until I was nearly 14, okay, we need to discuss that. The thought of anyone seeing me in any state of undress, even if it's just in my underwear, feels disgusting and makes me panicky. So I'm not joking when I say I was hyperventilating when I slammed into the door to shut it and was quickly trying to dress. Now while I'm doing that, my mum is shoving into the door, trying to force it open, yelling to let her in, and that she wanted to tell me to do something. I told her no, that I'm changing and she can't come in. She gave up getting in, mostly because I'm a fairly strong person despite never working out, unless you count picking up tables and kegs at work for fun exercise. I just like picking up heavy things to see if I can. Respect. But I will say, the fact that she bathed you until you were nearly 14 is actually disgusting. I mean, in a hygienic sense, I imagine it's quite good for you. But in every other sense, it's disgusting. And also, I guess that depends on how good your mother is at cleaning you. Loads and loads of factors here. The main being, It's disgusting. When I finally let her in, after changing, she's huffing and mad at me, demanding to know why I wouldn't let her in. I repeated that I was changing, and she said, "So? I'm your mother. I made that butt so I can look at it." Sorry, she said what? For audio listeners, I've turned on my camera here to show my utter dismay at what I've just read. I made that butt so I could look at it. Well, if that's not the most loving thing you've ever heard from your mother, I'm not sure what is. Let's carry on. I ignored that and said my door was locked and that she shouldn't just be letting herself in and unlocking my door. She responds with, "I can do what I want. It's my house. If I want in your room, then I'll come into your room. I can unlock your door if I want. What if there was an emergency? What if you were dying? What if I was dying?" I said, "I don't care. I'm an adult. This is my private space. You do not just let yourself in whenever you want. I don't disrespect you and let myself into your room and unlock your door. Don't do it to me." She just got mad and ran off, forgetting what she was going to tell me to do. Okay, and that is the end of the post, although OP has added a couple of edits with a lot more information, which I think is very relevant. First of all, thank you for all the replies giving advice and reassuring me. I'll look into a door stopper. I just worry about her reactions. Since just a few years ago, a bad experience with my dad and locked doors left me sobbing and in a panic attack on the bathroom floor while he pounded the door until it nearly broke, calling me a lot of things. So I get a lot of anxiety about my parents' reactions to being unable to get to me. I'll definitely try to get a stopper when I get paid next. Now, some more information. First of all, I don't pay rents. They want me to, and were going to have me start last year until my insurance skyrocketed, and so it's been harder for me to keep any money saved up. Secondly, it may be some time before I can fully move out due to money and the situation with my best friend, but I've been planning to pursue my master's after I finish my bachelor's at a school less than an hour away that's close to my work and requires freshmen to live on campus. The original plan was getting an internship out of state for a month or so to get practice being more independent, but I didn't get accepted to my choices, so I'm relying on pursuing a master's now for a good excuse for them to allow me to live away from them. Third, I'm not a legal dependent. Back in 2018, a month before my 18th birthday and right after I graduated high school, my parents insisted we get me an attorney and open a case to make me their dependent. I didn't want to. I knew it meant I'd have to stay forever, that I'd be stuck at home. I said I didn't want to do that, but they insisted it was for my own good and to help me. When we met my attorney, they didn't allow me to get a word in for the first 30 minutes with him. He made them wait in the other room so that he could finally be able to speak with me, and I told him I didn't want this. He asked about me, lots of questions. Finally, when the hearing occurred, my mother broke down sobbing, telling everyone in the room that I needed it, that I was going to die in a ditch somewhere, her exact words, that they just want to help me. The attempt to make me a dependent was denied, as my attorney found me perfectly capable and happily wanting to be independent and thought it unnecessary to make me into a dependent. 4. My sister and I used to speak of me living with her, but because of a medical situation with my nephew and with other family situations going on, my uncle is living with her and my brother-in-law to help with the kids and house. 5. After it being so long, I'm not sure the full name and contact of my old therapist anymore, only a last name. I don't even know the address of her office, as my parents didn't allow me to learn how to drive until I was 22. I may try to speak with our doctor about referrals, as I know the address at least. I'm just hoping I can find a day off or can find an in-person therapist, as I tried digital and was getting nowhere with the lack of privacy to speak with someone. Oh my goodness, I just realized what that means. I assume, in your own house you had your parents at your door probably listening in. Ugh, that's awful. Or actually probably coming into your door, unlocking it. Insane. And 6, my bank account is heavily monitored by my mother and she sees everything I do with it. I've been looking into opening a private account. I just worry about a new card coming in since she goes through all of our mail and I work often. And then OP says, finally, there have been many occasions where, when I get especially stressed from being busy with work and school and vent about it, my parents have insisted I just quit my job, focus on school, and they'll take care of me and my bills. I could just stay home and only do school. They stopped recently only because I told them to their faces that if I had to be home and not work, I'd go crazy like that and unalive myself. Dramatic? Yes. Incredibly so, but it is true. Some of the hardest times of my depression were when I was out of a job and trapped at home constantly. Turns out it's probably a mixture of depression and bipolar. We didn't find out I was bipolar until last year when I first spoke with our most recent doctor. And I did attempt but failed. Not that they noticed, just thought I was acting tired and told me to lay down. A somewhat minor thing, I think, but when I drive places, I have to let my mum know where I'm going. And if she says no, then I can't go. Same with trips. And she makes sure that I'm going where I said by tracking me. Oh God. The one time I turned it off, she called me freaking out. Now guys, get in the comments down below. Let me know if you agree with me on this. I think, well, this is my takeaway from what I've just read there. I think that your parents, OP, are doing all this stuff and being so controlling because they think that because you have Asperger's, autism, they're allowed to do that. And I think it's that is in their mind for some reason enabling this terrible, I mean, it's not even parenting, just this terrible control that they have on your life. I think because they think, even though clearly they're just wrong, that you need them so much. But I mean, the attorney said it himself, like, you're completely fine. You're happily independent. You have your own life. What are they doing? The bathing till 14 thing, I think it just highlights that. This is a thing that's been going on for years, decades now probably, where for whatever reason they think that because you have autism, they get to completely control your life and ultimately it sounds like ruin it. It's actually insane. In many ways, is it not just ableist? I think it actually is. Your mother is just infantilizing you, I think, because you have autism. Maybe it's nothing to do with that. I just think that is the reason why in her head she sees it as okay. Your dad, to be fair, just sounds like an awful person anyway. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, if he is even still around. I couldn't quite work that out, but yeah, no doubt about it. Your mum is a narcissist. My daughter's entitled father is finally leaving us alone. Hey Reddit, this came up far earlier than planned. And while I'm happy to announce that my daughter and I are finally free, there's some sad news mixed in. So just to recap once again, I, now a 34-year-old woman, have a daughter who is 6 with Jeff, a 37-year-old man. We never dated, it was a one-night stand where protection failed. I never regret having my daughter, despite Jeff demanding me to end the pregnancy, then refusing to be involved for my daughter's first 4 years of life. 2 years ago, he reappeared demanding parental rights. Our country's courts deny that since he was not on her birth certificate, his decision, and he had never paid any kind of child support. It turned out he didn't care for my daughter. All he wanted was to use her as a replacement for a child he lost with his wife. Now, before I go to the update, I did get a lot of questions to answer. First of all, did I know that Jeff was married? Well, he wasn't when we had our one-night stand. 2, are you interested in Jeff? No, I'm aromantic, meaning I do not develop romantic feelings. I don't think that's a healthy mindset for a long-term partner, so I refuse to date. I was okay with one-night stands until I had my daughter. 3, why did you send information to Jeff? As in pictures, details and dates of birthdays, celebrations, etc. OP says, because my mother recommended it and she was absolutely right. Had I not done so, he could have sued me for parental alienation. By trying to get him involved, I actually came out far better situated to prove that I'm not trying to keep him away out of spite, but because I truly think he's a danger. 4, why don't you talk more about your daughter's emotions and status? No offense, but I give just enough information on my 6-year-old. Yeah, I'm going to say that's a weird question to ask for the emotions of a 6-year-old in a Reddit post. Okay, I don't think people on Reddit are bad, but this is the internet. I don't really need to speak in depth and details on my child's mental state or her actions. What I want to share about myself, that's fine. I'm a fully grown woman. My child, though, is another matter. I don't even post pictures of her on social media. All you need to know, for the people asking, is that she's happy, healthy, and has a father figure in her godfather. She's a normal, rambunctious little girl. And then finally, number 5, why was Jeff arrested? He got into a drunk fight. Assault charges. It's completely unrelated to my kid, but could have been used for custody matters. It ended up being unnecessary. Okay then, now let's get into the update. A reminder that this is posted just 22 days ago at the time of recording, and the previous final update in which OP's daughter's father sent a priest to harass her was 3 months ago. While our case is yet to be reviewed, we were scheduled for September 2025, Jeff's lawyer contacted mine to say they were dropping their demand for parental rights. About 6 weeks ago, Jeff formally agreed to drop any claims for rights or responsibility to my daughter. I know a lot of people are going to go all over, but what about child support or inheritance? Keep reading.
it should explain why it's not worth it. My lawyer went over the documents to make sure it wasn't a legal trap of sort, and he confirmed that they were exactly that. He wasn't asking for anything in return, just to drop. I didn't question anymore, I just had it signed, and now we need to wait a couple of weeks to get confirmation that everything is done. Since both parties agree on this, it should be relatively quick to get it through the courts. If it sounds weird that he suddenly just gave up, I thought the same. To be sincere, I was half tempted to snoop around, but I was way too busy making arrangements. As some people suggested, I will be moving. I won't leave the country I live in, but I plan to move closer to my support system, my daughter's godparents. It turns out there's a property less than 5 minutes away from them on sale. There's no home built yet, so I've got a lot to do, but that is my intended new home. We also got not 1, not 2, but 3 dogs. The cat probably is planning my murder. So with all of these changes, I have to admit, I didn't have time to snoop. The thing is, the whole thing came to me rather than me needing to look. I met with Jeff's in-laws. It was pure coincidence. I was waiting on some things in a store and they were there. I'd met them in passing in that mess of a Christmas party last year, but this was really the first time we talked. My daughter was thankfully at school since the topic was heavy. They recognized me and asked if I could speak to them. I wasn't sure, but I decided to be polite and I offered to buy them a coffee. They were very nice, not entitled at all. They explained they were sorry for their daughter's behavior. She'd not been the same since she lost her child. Those who called out that she was using her dead baby's name on my daughter were actually right. Oh my goodness me. So if you remember, guys, from the previous story, I guess the penultimate update now, or actually 2 updates ago, I suppose, Jeff's new wife was calling OP's daughter Gabrielle, not even close to OP's daughter's real name. And this, I suppose, is why. I mean, to be honest, that is just actually incredibly sad. It makes me feel a lot worse for Jeff's new wife than I previously did. I thought she was doing it like massively on purpose, just out of spite, but maybe this explains it. Anyway, Jeff's wife's parents explained they just wanted to clear the air with me. I told them I didn't personally blame them, but I couldn't forgive their daughter, and she was a big worry. That is when things hit the fan. The mother started crying, and the father explained that Jeff's wife passed away. Self-inflicted. I feel like trash for the things I told them. I apologized, but they were very gracious and told me they knew I had no idea. We talked a little about her, about their grandchild. I found out what Jeff told me about how his child died was a lie. And now I don't feel so kind as to keep it wrapped up. He shook an infant because she was colic. If you don't know what that is, it's when babies just cry non-stop. I was angry. I'm still angry. No one should ever shake a baby to the point they pass away. That is just diabolical in my opinion. He had told me she just passed away from sudden infant mortality. It's a common thing here, unfortunately. Once again, guys, we don't know in which country this takes place. They talked about Jeff and how he swore up and down I would agree with his idea to have my daughter pass for their lost grandchild, and that would help their daughter. They were not really thinking straight, and I get it. Jeff's a charmer, and mix that with grief, it goes nowhere well. There were other things said, but the main thing was they didn't want any resentment on my part to their family or their daughter. I told them that I don't hate them or their daughter and how sorry I was they had to go through all of this. They gave me a picture of my daughter's half-sister. She was a very cute baby, and I plan to one day explain things to my daughter. I think it's important that she knows. I also know where Jeff's wife and her baby are buried. I think not yet, but when things aren't as raw as they are right now, I'll take my daughter to visit her sister. I called my lawyer after to give him these new details. He did reprimand me for speaking to the in-laws alone, but he understood the situation. My lawyer is a good friend of mine, and he tends to be very blunt when I make mistakes. He promised me he's making sure that whatever ties could exist between Jeff and my daughter are fully cut legally. More things have come to light too. People were right. Jeff was pretty much lying to everyone, trying to paint himself as this saintly father that couldn't possibly be part of his one surviving daughter's life. A lot of people immediately judge single mothers here as homewreckers or prostitutes, so I had a few bad encounters with people throwing insults and threats my way. Another thing that came up, which was relatively recent, this was about 2 weeks before he gave up. Jeff began telling people he offered to marry me, but I refused, that I was always after his money. Thankfully, that one lie didn't go far with most people that know both of us, since I've made it very clear throughout my life that I'm never getting married, and I don't need his money. I got into a high income job to care for my mum, and now my daughter. I don't really care for excessive luxury. His wife passed away not long before he sent the agreement that he didn't want anything to do with my daughter. It does explain why Jeff gave up. I still think he's the most horrible human being that exists, and an entitled, murderous idiot. He felt entitled to my daughter, he failed his wife, and killed an innocent baby. And I know he knows I'm posting this on Reddit, so if you read this, Jeff, I hope if karma is real, it gives you everything you deserve. I want to say more, but I don't want to break Reddit's rules. But yeah, here's the good news mixed with terrible news. I might update this post if anything else happens, but I want to believe this is over. I just want to close this chapter and look into a new start. And OP has also left a small disclaimer at the end of the post saying, I don't know how he got away with killing his child. I have no access to police records or the investigation. I'm not part of law enforcement or involved with any judicial entity. For people asking me for more information on it, I'm really sorry, but I can't give you a full legal case. I personally don't know how some people on Reddit get access to police records that easily, because I certainly don't have access to them. All the info I have is what I'm told by others, or what my lawyer can find. She's under 10, so she eats for free. I own a small restaurant. Classic American foods, decent prices, kid-friendly. One of our policies is that kids 10 and under can get anything off the kids menu for free. The stuff on the kids menu is cheap, like a bowl of mac and cheese with some chicken nuggets isn't breaking my bank on food cost. A hot dog and some fries aren't going to bankrupt me. Last night, I was sitting in the office watching some YouTube videos when I noticed a family that I know personally. Their daughter, 12, is friends with my granddaughter, who is 13. When I see people I know, I have a tendency to sort of take over the table. The server still gets the tip, but I give the table a lot of extra attention. So I stop over and say hi, and I check their ticket in the computer out of curiosity. The dad got our 22-ounce porterhouse with a fully dressed potato, butter, cheese, sour cream, bacon, chili, ranch dressing, and crispy fried onions. Goodness me, I hope none of you are hungry listening to this. That has got me salivating. The mum got our fried catfish and hush puppies. The daughter got our pulled pork cheeseburger with onion rings. Note, the daughter ordered off the main menu, not the kids menu. Anyway, they spent about 40 minutes eating, drinking, and generally being merry. Both myself and their server are keeping an eye on their drinks, making sure they're having a good experience. I even gave them 5 free credits on the jukebox, just to be nice. I head back to the office to take a phone call, and while I'm back there, I notice a commotion on the cameras at that very same table. Before I can make it to the dining room, the server is in the kitchen, heading towards my office. Apparently, there was a mistake with their tab, and their daughter's meal should have been free. The server tried to explain that that only applies to items on the kids menu, and the girl had ordered off the main menu. The explanation fell on deaf ears. So I head out to solve the problem. I explain that not only did the girl order off the main menu, but I know for a fact that their daughter is not 10 or under, since my granddaughter had been to her 12th birthday party back in March. The mum tried to argue, but the dad put his hand up, apologised for his wife's behaviour, and passed me his card to pay. Before they'd even left my establishment, the mum had already left a nasty and completely false Google review stating that we lie about our policies and kids don't really get free meals. Okay, well, it's a good thing that the dad is sensible, unlike the mum. But what I really want to see out of this, and I personally love when I see this, is when you see a bad Google review left for a particular establishment. To be honest, a lot of the time it is a restaurant. And then immediately under that, you can see the response left by the restaurant owner that just destroys the original review, just literally sentence for sentence. Every single point, a lot of the time, the manager has a rebuttal for. So I'd love to see this in this situation. You know, the woman clearly lying about what had happened, probably saying my kid's under 10, but wasn't allowed to have, you know, a free meal, even though she ordered it off the kids menu. Just obviously all a lie there. And I'd love to see OP just, say, no, not true at all, and completely ratio the original review. Now moving on to our second story of the episode. This one actually has an update afterwards as well. My parents assume they are going to move in with me when they are old. I was on the phone with them this morning because they called after I texted them an update on my husband's and my house hunting adventure. I'm currently pregnant with baby number 3 and live safely 15-ish hours away from these people who birthed and raised me, while simultaneously messing me up mentally and emotionally. Why I stay in contact with them nowadays is becoming more and more of a mystery to me, but here we are.
Well, while looking at one of the houses I was describing online, my dad asked where would they stay in the future. Stupidly thinking, as a guest, I mentioned one of the extra rooms could be a multi-purpose room. If you have an air mattress and you're coming for a visit, there you go. This house has 4 bedrooms, 5 if you count one of the rooms on the main floor. He then asked about permanently, further in the future. I said, permanently? He said, when I retire, or sometime after that, stairs won't be your mum's and my friends around then. What, you think you'll be living with us? Of course. No, I say. But we can help with the kids. No. Then my mum got involved. Remember, we always talked about this when you were younger. No. What, are you gonna put us in a home? You'll make friends, I said. Well, that's not nice of you. I never said I was. The discussion ended after that. And then a few days later, we got the following update. So for a little bit more context, first of all, I am a 29-year-old woman, my husband is 28, and we are house hunting as we're expecting our 3rd baby in November and are hoping to move out of our trailer park by the end of summer. We were interested in a house that was essentially my dream home. Victorian, built in 1900, but completely refurbished on the inside, but with all the original wood floors and detailing. Gorgeous. A house like this would easily be $200,000 last year or the year before, but the housing market is dropping and we found it for approximately $140,000. We live in the Midwest. Oh my goodness me. So a 5-bedroom or 4-bedroom house for $140,000. Oh, the fact that I live in London sometimes is just absolutely brutal. That is a disgusting price. Oh my goodness me. Genuinely, 10 times the price of that you would need for a house like that in London. It's just insane. Anyway, it has 4 to 5 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms. There we go. OP has clarified. My parents the other day asked where they would stay when we come to live with you. That's in quotes. Now, this was never a discussion. They just always assumed they'd live with me when they're older, and I always said no. Well, we messaged the finance person about what the monthly payments would really be. On the app, it estimated $950 plus a month. We figured we could swing that, but needed to know for sure before putting an offer in. She came back with over $1,000. That's not doable for us. We're going through a program and have a grant, so we aren't rich. Lower middle class at best. Thankfully, we have another house we had in mind. A craftsman style built in 1920, with built-ins, wood floors, and a nice sized fenced-in backyard. The basement even has a slightly finished room, perfect for hiding from storms and tornadoes. And it's $20,000 less than the dream house. It's just a little smaller, and bedrooms were pretty small, but it's something I was willing to deal with. We saw it before we saw the dream house. Well, when updating my parents on the house situation, my mum all but threw a fit. You don't have to go with the first house you see. It wasn't, I replied. You can wait until something else comes up. Actually, no, we can't. Some weird law passes in our state in regards to realtors, and our realtor wants us to find a house before it goes into full effect in July/August, which just gives us more incentive to find a house pronto. So far, no other houses have popped up in our area in our budget. You're about to have your 3rd kid. Where are you going to put him? Well, bunk beds are a thing. Are you going to sleep in the basement if you have more? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. It's so tiny. It's bigger than what pictures show, but yes, compared to the dream house, it's definitely smaller than that, but it's also more realistic. I knew what she was really worried about though the whole time. Where will we stay? But she didn't say it. She started looking at other houses on the app and tried to bring them up to me. They were all houses we'd already looked at or were too far away from my husband's work. She was really trying. My dad was actually pretty chill about the whole thing. She even brought up a house that needed serious work. We want to live in the house, Mum, and we don't want a money pit. She practically growled at me. The call soon ended after that. The one thing I don't really ever understand with these people is just like where their conscience is at, or just how they feel about things in general just makes no sense to me. If I was begging my own children to let me live with them when I'm older, I would just be so like, I don't know, I'd have to be in such a weird mindset or just state to do that. Especially when I'm still perfectly happy, like living with my husband or wife or whatever. It's just weird. Are you not just chill living on your own? Do you really want to be around your kids that much or just use them, I think, is really what's going on here to such an extent. But then I feel like in my head, I'd just be like, what am I doing? I'm using my own kids for housing. Am I not a bit better than that? Should it not, if anything, be the other way around? I don't know, it's really weird. If you actually need to live with your children for sort of, medical reasons, or because you are incapable of doing things and living by yourself because you're older, that's completely fair enough. But that's just not what's going on here. So I don't get it. It's just a very, very weird mentality, I think. Left her kid alone in a bookstore for hours and thought it was totally normal. This here happened a while ago. I recently got reminded of it after meeting an old friend, and I thought I'd share this story because I know after 13 years in retail/customer services that many people would think that what she did was okay. Back when I worked in a bookstore in a shopping mall, there was this little girl, maybe 5 to 6 years old, just sitting quietly in a corner, looking at the pictures of a book. At that moment, we just noticed her because she was kind of hidden, tucked in a corner, and was totally silent. We asked where her parents were. She said her mummy was in the shop next to ours and told her to wait in the bookstore. We asked if she knew how long it had been, and she pointed to the hands of the clock where they'd been when her mum left. It had been nearly 3 hours. I still can't believe that kid stayed quiet for so long, and I'm still kicking myself for not noticing her sooner. We took her to the mall security and they started looking for the mum. That brainless woman was in another mall next to ours. We have 3 smaller shopping malls on the same street next to each other. The mall security was shocked. One of them was a dad and went to get the kid biscuits and an apple juice. He knew right away she was really hungry after 3 hours all alone waiting. I never forgot how happy she was munching on those chocolate chip cookies and sipping her juice box. They called the police and child protection services. Me and my colleague waited with the kid. We actually had brought the book with us for some reason, so she wouldn't be too scared. When the mum finally arrived, I swear she did not understand at all why what she did was wrong and got annoyed at us for going to security. She argued that her daughter was safe in our store and that she, quote, knew to not cause trouble. That got the police suspicious because the kid was indeed very quiet and eerily well behaved. Looking back, it's kind of obvious that she was scared into being this quiet and calm as a child. The mother's justification was basically that since our store was selling books for kids and some toys, we were essentially babysitters and that we were the ones in the wrong for not, quote, wanting to do our job and watch the children. Needless to say, the cops were just totally done with her and took her to the police station. The kid went with child protection services. The mum was kicking and screaming, threatening to sue us for slander and defamation. Now, of course, that never happened, but I hope this little girl is now with better people. She's now with people who love and cherish her. Yeah, I mean, surely that's just illegal, guys. But to be honest, I actually don't know the rules about if you're allowed to leave your kid just randomly in public, but I presume it's got to be illegal. I mean, it has to be, right? Child protection services have got to be having a look at this and saying, it's just not right. I agree with your last point, though. I hope she is with better people. And you're right. No child that age, usually 5 to 6 years old, would be quiet for that length of time. Clearly they were very hungry as well, without it being drummed into them in probably a very, well, bordering on abusive, if not abusive way, that they have to be quiet. So yeah, a lot's going on there. Not just this one incident, there's probably a lot more bad stuff happening as well. Neighbor thinks her kid's bedtime should decide when I can do my hobbies. My neighbor, who is a 27-year-old woman, has 5 kids and 1 more on the way. She doesn't work. She's not ill or anything, just chooses not to. Lives off benefits and is all sorts of entitled. Tonight, I was working on my brother's birthday present, and this included needing to make a few cuts with the chop saw. It was 9 PM and I was done by 9:15 PM. In my country, the curfew for noise and noise disturbance is 11:30 PM. She then sends me this long Facebook message about how her kid's bedtime is 8 PM, and therefore I need to not use power tools after that time, and could I only use them in the daytime so as to not wake her kids. I replied saying I was done now. Bear in mind, she sent that message after literally less than 10 minutes of noise, and that I couldn't confine my usage to daytime because I have a job. I could have said a lot more. I felt like saying to her, your kids are going to be living with a screaming newborn in a few months, so maybe focus on teaching them to sleep without it being perfectly silent. But I restrained myself. Even so, the very little I did say clearly set her off. She sent me another paragraph about her kids needing to be ready for school at 8 AM before blocking me. Now, I will just say here that I do think that being respectful to your neighbors and people living around you in terms of noise pollution is a very fair thing. And, you know, if you know that you live around families that have young children that want to get to sleep early, I would suggest that in general, trying not to use power tools late at night is a good thing to do. Which, by the way, I'm sure OP does in general. However, on one-off occasions where you need to do something, and yeah, obviously you can't choose, to use any hour of the day to use your power tools if you have a normal life with a normal job and other commitments, then it's absolutely fine to do. And I think her reaction is pretty insane, to be honest. Yeah, the main point being, you have to teach your children how to sleep through a lot of noise. I mean, now, thankfully, due to my parents, I think, teaching me as a child to sleep with a lot of noise going on. I know that sounds weird, but my mum actually does often say to me, "Oh, aren't you lucky that we used to vacuum around your cot when you were young? Because I sleep under the flight path. Last year, I slept right on a main road with loads of cars going through. Completely fine." I think it's up to your parents, really, to teach children how to do that, and not up to everyone else in the neighborhood to work around young children. Yeah, it's nice to be nice, but not all the time, and you can't just be living your life to the strict, regimented daily schedule of children. Now for our final entitled parent story of this episode. Entitled Disney Adult Demands That I Change Clothes in the Middle of a Crowded Restaurant. To preface, this situation came up a few years back, but still lives rent-free in my mind from how absurd it was. I was on a family vacation at Disney World a few years back. I, 19 years old at the time, was staying on property at a resort, but on our first night we had dining reservations at a different hotel that was a fair distance away. It was a casual buffet-style restaurant, so there was no dress code or reason to be fancy, so I wore a pair of shorts and a graphic tee of a unicorn that said, "Everything sucks," in a glittery cursive font. About halfway into dinner, when I got up to get seconds, a woman, probably in her 40s, stepped up to physically block me and immediately started shouting in my face about my obscene clothing. I just stood there completely baffled, while she went on and on about how our young children, who were calmly eating on the other side of the room, were being distressed by my, quote, disgusting and inappropriate shirt, and then she demanded I take it off in the middle of the restaurant. When I told her I don't exactly carry replacement clothes with me, she demanded that I go to the gift shop and buy a new family-friendly shirt, specifically one with Disney princesses or Minnie on it, because that's what her children would like to see. At that point, I didn't want to deal with her anymore and said that I'm not here to appeal to kids I don't even know. The waitress would have stopped me at check-in if there was a problem with my clothing, and I just wanted to eat my dinner and leave. I walked away to get the rest of my meal and left her screaming at me for a few minutes before she eventually gave up. I hope those kids turned out okay. You know what I would have done in that situation right there? And I wouldn't have done this, right? But in my heart of hearts, I would have loved to do this. It's just take my top off and just like whip it around my head and just chuck it. I've been like, there you go. You happy now? Are you happy now? This is what you asked for. Just full nips out. In fact, I'm going to do it now. But in all seriousness, I mean, this woman's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You should have said to her, well, if you want me to change my shirt, go and buy me one from the gift store. Then I'll change it. Because in that way, you're getting a good deal. Even if the shirt's terrible, you could then donate it afterwards and keep your own shirt. But yeah, insane. Again, kind of similar to the last story. Not everyone is going to work around your children who also, again, by the way, don't care at all. Man angrily insists I put a leash on a dog that's not my dog. I was doing my usual evening walk about the campus of Caltech a couple nights ago, with my earbuds in listening to an Audible book. A man stopped right in front of me and yelled, "Take your earbuds out." I took one out. He said, in an aggressive, angry tone, "You can't have your dog off leash here. Put a leash on your dog." I said, very calmly, "I don't have a dog." The man gave this guffaw of disbelief and gestured at something behind me. He said, "Do you have a leash with you? I don't see a leash. You can't walk a dog here off leash." By this time, I had a good idea what was going on. I walk at Caltech all the time, and I see certain animals pretty often. I turned to look, and yes, it was just what I thought. I said, "That's not a dog, that's a coyote. It's a wild animal." For a long second, the man stared at me. Then he stared at the coyote. Then he made a kind of, huh, noise. He turned around and started half walking, half running away from both me and the coyote. I almost called after him, "Never run from a wild predator," but I didn't. Damn, there we go. What a story to kick things off with. And you know what's even better? For those of you watching on YouTube right now, OP's actually posted a photo that they then took of the coyote. They edit to add that this photo was taken at about 9 PM. It was dark, But because of obviously taking the photo on an iPhone plus some area lighting, it makes it look a lot lighter than it actually was. But yeah, you can see there, clearly not a dog, clearly a coyote. And I'm just not sure if it gets any more embarrassing than that. I mean, it's just crazy. Just so good. What a start to the episode. The fact that he was probably scared of the coyote after learning what it was, and then was half walking but really running away afterwards as well, is just so good. Just such a good start. Let's carry on. Woman at hospital refuses to check in. This just happened. I'm still sitting at the lobby in awe of the event, and I wanted to write it down while it's still fresh in my mind. I'm waiting for a ride home, so I got to witness the majority. For blood work at this particular medical centre, there's a digital kiosk to sign in rather than speaking to a desk. The kiosk is very simple. Put your ID and insurance card in the machine, it'll scan, check you have a blood work request, then confirm it to the room in the back. While I was waiting, an older woman comes up to the front and entirely passes the kiosk and attempts to open the door into the lab. The door, not locked, is opened, and nurses quickly rush up to stop her, leading to an argument in the lobby with around 3 nurses blocking the door. One nurse said, "Mom, you need to check in and wait to be called." The woman replied, "Oh, I'm not doing that. You can't pay me to touch a dang computer. I don't even have an ID. You can look up my information in the back." The second nurse said, "It doesn't work like that here. The kiosk is very simple. You can manually put in your information if you don't have an ID." "I'm not doing that. This is unnecessary. The office in another town over doesn't have one. It's hard enough to put a card in the grocery store machine. Now you're making me do it here?" "We're not that other location though. I'm sorry, but we need you to check in. I can help if you need." "Oh, this is ridiculous. Just look up my information. I'm an old woman. I won't touch a computer. I don't touch a computer anywhere. You can't force me." "Mom, we're not forcing you. It's just how our system works. I can do it for you if you have your information." "Fine, do it then." From there, she proceeds to announce her personal information very loudly, and the nurse inputs it. "Do you have an insurance card?" "Obviously, but I don't have it on me. You can look it up." "Unfortunately, I can't. Our system doesn't work that way." "Do you know your insurance ID?" "Yeah." And then she gives the number. "There you go. You're checked in. No problems." Finally. I don't understand why this new generation is making everything so difficult. You can't expect me to use a computer. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone I know or any of these people behind me. For a 1 to 10, I'd give it a 0. "I understand, Mom. You're signed in though. You can take a seat now." "What? I can't go back? I just went through all that trouble to sign in. I'm an old woman. This is already stressful." "There's someone in the back already. You'll be called in soon." "I'll make sure to never come to this location again. Hurry it up." So then the nurses went into the back, and this woman took a seat somewhat close to me and began talking to the other people in the lobby. Only one other person engaged her, and she started talking about pancakes, like she didn't cause a spectacle just now. Is this what secondhand embarrassment is? When she was called, she left her pile of belongings on the chair and went to the back. Okay, aside from the fact that this woman is obviously very, very entitled, I want to ask you guys this question. Do you think that, in the modern day in which we all live, a woman or a man or anyone of a certain age has the right to now say that they don't want anything to do with modern technology and that everyone else should then work around them? Now, I understand when this sort of tech came in, phones, the internet, etc. It was a new thing for everyone. And a lot of people didn't want to learn. A lot of people did learn, whatever. But now I feel like just, the amount of tech that's in the world, that is just the way it is right now. Like, in my GP, you also sign in on the kiosk. You don't go and speak to somebody. That is just a very common thing now. Loads of different places now you have to download an app to order something, for example, or to get in somewhere. I just went to the Euros that are happening right now in the football world in Germany. You had to have an app on your phone to get in. If you didn't have an app, it was impossible. Like, the barcode was constantly changing on your phone. That is how, they make sure that people don't get in that don't have a ticket or have scammed their way in or whatever. What I'm saying is it's kind of the modern way. You have to be up to date, at least a little bit, with some form of technology. So I personally think that it's about time this woman changed her ways, and other people like her. Unfortunately, I know people don't want to, but you kind of have to get on board at least the minimum amount with tech. Like, I think that you should have a phone if you can afford one, You should know how to download an app, etc. You should know how to log in, at the hospital on a little easy kiosk board like that. What do you guys think though? Do you think that there should be like an age cutoff, or do you think it's just time that everyone started just understanding that tech really isn't that hard, even if you're old? And I would actually go as far to say as it's her own ignorance, and for some reason the fact that she's proud of not using tech or computers, that it's just working against her when she just needs to adapt and open her mind to the world of tech. Now for our third story. I know it says these deposits are non-refundable. I've been tattooing professionally for close to 2 years, and this is my first time dealing with this particular situation. While I fully understand why individuals are reluctant to have a newer artist working on them, I've also seen experienced artists mess up and or screw people over. I had a young man and his father come into the shop recently. This was my second time speaking with them. The adult-aged son wanted a relatively easy piece on his forearm. It consisted of only lettering, a little line work, and some generic cloud shading. They did not ask for a specific artist, and they put a deposit down with me for an appointment initially set for today. The young man's mother contacted me yesterday, explained that they had an event coming up, and she did not want tattoo plastic wrap present in the event photos, and wished to reschedule. Weird excuse, but not a problem. I attempted to reschedule him twice before speaking with the mother again today. The mother began with, "It says right on the appointment card that these deposits are non-refundable, but I just thought I'd ask." She then went on to state that individuals online said go in and ask for the owner. So her husband and son were supposed to ask for the owner instead of whoever just threw you up there. Now the owner was not even there either time they came in, and the owner wasn't mentioned. She kept stating that she was aware I was new and wanted someone more experienced, like the owner, doing her adult-aged son's first piece since it was bigger. Again though, it was a simple piece. At one point, she even asked, "Are you still an apprentice or what?" When I informed her that I'd been taking on my own clients for well over a year now, she only said, "Yeah, see, I'd like someone with more experience to do it." I offered to transfer the deposit over to a more experienced artist, the exact one she was asking for, and she stated that she'd just like the deposit back. She stated a second time that she was aware that the deposit was non-refundable, but that she just thought I'd ask. I told her at this point that the owner retains half of the deposit, so I'd have to discuss the potential return with him, and she asked in a rather rude tone, "Okay, well, should I expect to hear back from you tonight then, or should I be contacting him myself?" Okay, no doubt about it. With this one, I would definitely tell her that a refund is not available. I think, you've been messed around a lot here. So I think you should be able to keep the money as payment for the time and effort that you've put into all of this, because goodness me, it sounds like just horrible to deal with this woman. Also, I know it's her son, but as you kept saying throughout this post, he is an adult. Surely, therefore, he should be the one cancelling his appointment, not his mum. That is really weird. I mean, I don't know who made the appointment in the first place. That obviously makes a difference as to what I'm saying now, but if he made the appointment in the first place, which I presume he did, because booking in for a tattoo on someone else's behalf is very weird anyway, surely he should be the one to cancel it. So in that case, I would just say, look, sorry, I need to speak to the client, and then make a decision after that. Don't deal with this horrible mother. I want a biscuit. The 2-day saga of a hospital Karen. This is going to be long, but full of entitlement. I was in hospital and ended up being put in the observation unit because no specialist beds were available. The OBS unit is a catch-all ward where patients are put if they're not in imminent danger but need regular monitoring. It's bright and extremely noisy, so nobody can sleep well. Unfortunately, Biscuit Karen arrives at 10 PM on day one. What a nickname, by the way. Why is she called Biscuit Karen? Because she wants a biscuit and she's shouting this loudly enough for the whole OBS unit to hear. Never mind the time, or that we're mostly trying to sleep. Never mind that her blood sugar is 8.5, elevated, and she's diabetic, so she really doesn't need more sugar. But hey ho, the long-suffering nurses find her a biscuit and ask her to be quiet. Biscuit Karen, though, does not quieten down because shouting is her default setting, and she doesn't seem to notice that other patients exist. After 10 minutes of solid noise pollution, she wants another biscuit. The nurses give it to her. More noise. Then, another 15 minutes later, she shouts, calling for another biscuit. The nurses are occupied, so nobody answers her immediately. So she shouts her request louder, as if we all hadn't heard her already. This is where the nurses begin to lose patience. She is told to be quiet, and her blood sugar level is mentioned. However, Biscuit Karen insists, so she's given another freaking biscuit. Maybe the nurses drugged this one because Biscuit Karen soon goes to sleep and snores loudly. This was a taste of what was to come, but nobody on the OBS unit knew it yet. Day 2, 11 PM. Biscuit Karen has been okay all day and nothing much appears to be wrong with her. She has a walking aid and can get herself to the toilet, but she doesn't want to. She shouts to call a nurse to put her on the commode. A very blunt nurse points out that she's seen Karen walking, so she's not going to help her. The toilet is only 10 meters away. Biscuit Karen does not accept this. She keeps shouting for a nurse to help her. Eventually, the blunt nurse goes to check, and Biscuit Karen has actually wet herself in her passive-aggressive rage. The nurse is shocked and is telling Biscuit Karen off. Biscuit Karen doesn't care. Meanwhile, the bed is now sodden and the sheets have to be changed. The blunt nurse helps put Biscuit Karen on the commode and then goes to get the spare sheets. Unfortunately for the nurses, other patients are being equally as tricky. There's the alcoholic man who can't walk but keeps trying and falling to the floor, the polar opposite of our anti-heroine. And a woman with a broken neck who constantly takes off her nightgown and tries to go wandering. All the nurses are kept busy rounding up the strays and inevitably forget about the abandoned Biscuit Karen left sitting on the commode. Can I just say, this wing sounds like an absolute nightmare. Oh my goodness me. Biscuit Karen ensures that she's not neglected for long. Can somebody help me? Ricochets repeatedly around the OBS unit to the dismay of all the people trying to sleep. Eventually it becomes, somebody help me, my back hurts. Of all the disruptive behavior happening on the OBS unit, she's by far the loudest, the most persistent, and the most obnoxious, because she caused her own discomfort in the first place. I'm peeved, and so is everyone else. The blunt nurse gets back to her and an argument starts. She's cross as she's needlessly making the bed. Biscuit Karen is angry that she's been left in an uncomfortable sitting position. In fact, she's getting more aggressive by the second, and eventually she slaps the nurse. The blunt nurse does not put up with this nonsense. She abandons making the bed, leaves Biscuit Karen on timeout, still on the commode, and ignores all shouted demands to come back. She tells the other irate patients that she's not risking further aggression, and we all agree with her in solidarity. The blunt nurse was true to her word, so eventually a deeply compassionate nurse tried her luck making the bed. Unfortunately for DC nurse, Biscuit Karen is a raging racist, true to stereotype, and she not only calls her the N-word, but also tells her to go back to where she came from. Oh my goodness. DC nurse nopes out at that point, whilst blunt nurse calls security. Biscuit Karen has begun yelling every few seconds, I want my phone! Where is my phone? Still from the commode, presumably so she can enact her threats. I'm going to report you! I'm going to get you fired! The nurses aren't stupid though, so nobody gives Biscuit Karen her phone. It doesn't occur to Biscuit Karen to get off the commode and find her own phone. Meanwhile, the other patients have hit their BS saturation point and have started yelling at Biscuit Karen to shut up. It's past 12 AM and nobody can go to sleep yet. At this point, the cries from Biscuit Karen change to, somebody help me, every 3 seconds over and over again. The nurses are unmoved. There's a torrent of reactive verbal abuse from the other patients, but Biscuit Karen doesn't seem to hear them. In fact, she's completely devolved into a pathetic toddler tantrum, except toddlers have more self-respect, and she stays immersed in her self-pity for a long time. Meanwhile, 1 AM rolls around. Security officers take their time to arrive, but when they do, they're met with what happens to be a distressed old lady who claims that the nurses are hurting her and that DC nurse actually hit her, an audacious lie. However, Biscuit Karen is too dysregulated to keep the facade up for long and morphs back into a spiteful and aggressive harpy when blunt nurse goes back to fix the bed. The security officers see exactly why they were called and try to keep the peace whilst the bed is finally finished. There's not much 2 thick-set men can do with a small old woman perched on a commode, but they tried. Eventually, Biscuit Karen starts demanding her medication, and somebody comes up with a bright idea of calling an accident and emergency doctor. Who can quell the entitled savagery of the enraged Karen? Of course, it would be a young, handsome, confident male doctor. The very epitome of a rescuer to an old female dog who's trying to play the victim. When he turns up, Biscuit Karen becomes a sweet and compliant old lady, answering, "Yes, doctor. No, doctor." She does try to repeat her lie about being assaulted, but several patient statements, 2 jaded nurses, and 2 exiting security personnel provided otherwise. The doctor gave Biscuit Karen her meds, she was helped to bed, and she fell asleep. Meanwhile, the rest of the patients on the obs unit were too high on adrenaline to feel drowsy, so were condemned to further wakefulness. I was glad to leave the next day. Wow, what a way to end this episode. I genuinely think that this woman probably ticks every box in terms of any sort of characteristic or trait that you would hate for someone to have. And to be honest, a lot of the time entitled people do tick the majority, but I reckon she's pushing 95, 100%. Just an awful, awful human, my goodness me. I mean, even the fact that she then turns on the charm, or at least tries to, and becomes like all sweet and, "Oh yes, yes, doctor, no, doctor," at the end, rather than just being horrible the whole way through, if anything, makes her worse to me, because she's just trying to manipulate even more. If she was just downright horrible, at least she'd be just downright horrible. The fact that she's probably able to get some people on her side when she is as disgusting as this genuinely makes her even worse as a human. Oh, my goodness me. I mean, 1 minute alone in a room with her, in a ward with her, would be bad. 1 night, geez, I bet the nurses are just thinking, oh, why on earth are people like this? I want to go home. So there we go, guys. Those are some of the very best entitled people stories from the past few months. Really hope you enjoyed. If you did and you want even more entitled people content right away, don't look any further. There's another episode on screen right there. If you're new to the channel, hit this button down here. Make sure you're subscribed and follow me on whatever platform you're on. And I'll catch you very soon with some more crazy stories.